It is 3 in the morning. The world outside is draped in a profound silence, a quiet that seems to hold its breath. Your body is exhausted, a deep cellular weariness that craves nothing more than the oblivion of sleep. Yet, your mind, your relentless mind, is wide awake. It is a carousel of thoughts, spinning with images of yesterday's conversations, tomorrow's obligations, a highlight reel of past regrets and future anxieties. There is a list of tasks, a catalogue of worries, a court of internal judges, passing sentences on things you said or failed to say. You feel a familiar, paradoxical state, the ache of being too tired to be awake and too awake to find rest. This feeling, this specific texture of modern suffering is not a personal failure. It is not a sign that you are broken or deficient. It is a symptom of the world we have built, a collective condition, a quiet pandemic of hurry. We live in a culture that worships at the altar of productivity, a society that equates busyness with worth and stillness with laziness. We are constantly urged to do more, be more, achieve more, and acquire more. We are caught in a powerful current, a relentless forward momentum, and we have forgotten the art of simply stopping. We have forgotten that our own being is not a project to be managed or a problem to be solved. And so, we find ourselves adrift, disconnected from the very ground of our existence, yearning for a peace we fear we may never find. But what if there was another way? Not a new technique to master, not another goal to strive for, not a 5-step plan to optimize your inner life. What if the way forward was actually a way back? Back to a wisdom that is as old as the mountains and as fresh as the morning dew. The wisdom of Zen does not offer complex answers or dogmatic beliefs. It offers something far more radical and far more simple. It offers an invitation to stop, to breathe, to look deeply at the nature of our own mind, and to gently, compassionately, let go of the burdens we were never meant to carry. It is a path of unlearning the frantic habits of the mind and returning to the natural rhythm of our own heart. It is a path to discovering that peace is not a distant destination, but a quiet presence that has been with you all along. This is an invitation to find your rest, not in the noisy chaos of the world, but here, now, in the gentle, simple melody of your own being. The world tells us to go. The green light, the ringing alarm, the endless stream of notifications on a screen, they all say the same thing. Go, faster, now. We have been conditioned from our earliest days to see life as a race towards a future destination, a promotion, a larger house, a state of perfect happiness that always seems to be just around the next corner. In this race, stopping is seen as a kind of failure. It is a dropped baton, a moment of weakness, a loss of momentum. We imagine that if we stop, even for a moment, we will be left behind, forgotten, buried under an avalanche of tasks and expectations. And so, we run on tired legs and with weary hearts. We run until our bodies force us to stop through illness or exhaustion. We run until our minds break down under the weight of anxiety and burnout. This kind of stopping, the stop that comes from collapse, feels like a defeat. It is a surrender born of depletion. But the wisdom of Zen speaks of a different kind of stopping. It is not a collapse, but a choice. It is not an act of surrender, but an act of profound courage. It is the art of the deliberate pause. Imagine choosing to stop, not because you are broken, but because you wish to be whole. Imagine pulling over to the side of the highway, not because the engine has failed, but simply to admire the way the sun is setting over the hills. This is the stopping that we are invited to explore. It is an act of quiet rebellion against the tyranny of speed. It is a declaration of sovereignty over your own experience. It says, "My life is not merely a series of tasks to be completed. My time is not just a resource to be managed. My being is a reality to be experienced, here and now." Procrastination is born from a fear of the task ahead. This wise stopping is born from a love for the moment that is present. It is the understanding that the quality of our journey is determined not by the speed at which we travel, but by the attention we bring to each step. When we are constantly moving, our vision is blurred. We see only the goal, the destination, and we miss the entire landscape of our lives as it unfolds around us. Stopping is what allows the dust to settle. It is what brings the world back into focus. It is in the pause that we can finally see. There is an old story that speaks to this truth with beautiful clarity. A person is walking through the mountains and suddenly comes face to face with a hungry, snarling tiger. In a panic, they turn and run. The tiger in hot pursuit. They run as fast as they can, their heart pounding in their chest, until they reach the edge of a great cliff. There is nowhere left to go. Thinking fast, they spot a thick vine hanging down the cliff face. They grab onto it and swing themselves over the edge, out of the tiger's immediate reach. As they hang there, suspended between the sky and the abyss, they look down. To their horror, another tiger is waiting on the ground below, looking up with hungry eyes. They are trapped, the tiger of the past behind them, the tiger of the future below them. As they cling to the vine, contemplating their impossible situation, they notice two small mice, one white and one black, have appeared from a crevice in the rock. Systematically, the mice begin to gnaw on the very vine that is holding them. The white mouse of the day and the black mouse of the night are eating away at their lifeline. Time is running out. In this moment of ultimate peril, with death certain from above, from below, and from the passage of time itself, their gaze falls upon something small and red growing from the cliff face. It is a single wild strawberry, glistening with dew. With their free hand, they reach out, pluck the strawberry, and bring it to their lips. They place it in their mouth and taste it. It is, without question, the most delicious, most exquisitely sweet strawberry they have ever tasted. This story is not about ignoring our problems. The tigers are real. The pressures of our past and the anxieties about our future are powerful and frightening. The passage of time, the two mice gnawing at the vine, is an undeniable reality of our existence. We cannot wish them away. The story does not suggest a magical escape. The person is not suddenly saved from the tigers. Instead, the story points to a radical possibility. It suggests that even in the midst of the most profound crisis, even when our life is hanging by a thread, there is still the capacity to experience the sweetness of the present moment. The strawberry is this moment. It is the feeling of the air on your skin. It is the sound of a bird singing outside your window. It is the warmth of the cup in your hands. It is the simple, unadorned reality of being alive, right here, right now. The art of stopping is the art of noticing the strawberry. It is the conscious choice to shift our attention, even for a breath, from the roaring tigers of what was and what will be, to the simple, tangible sweetness of what is. The person in the story did not deny their predicament. They were fully aware of the danger, but they did not allow that danger to consume their entire reality. They found a space within the crisis, a moment of pure, unadulterated experience. And in that moment, they were truly alive. In tasting the strawberry, they tasted life itself. How can we practice this in our own lives, which may feel like they are constantly being chased by tigers? We can begin with something small, something manageable. We can practice the 5-minute stillness. This is not a complex meditation technique. It is a simple, humble act of reclaiming a few moments of your day. The instruction is this: at some point in your day, perhaps in the morning before the chaos begins, or in the afternoon when you feel overwhelmed, find a place where you can be undisturbed. Set a timer for just 5 minutes. And for those 5 minutes, give yourself permission to do absolutely nothing. Resist the urge to be productive. Do not try to solve a problem, plan your evening, or organize your thoughts. Do not even try to meditate in a formal sense. Simply sit. Sit in a chair or on the floor. Let your hands rest in your lap. You can close your eyes, or you can let your gaze rest softly on a point in front of you. Your only task is to be present in that space for 5 minutes. Notice the feeling of your body in the chair. Notice the light in the room. Notice the subtle sounds, the hum of a refrigerator, the distant traffic, the sound of your own breathing. Your mind will wander. That is what minds do. It will be chased by tigers. When you notice it has wandered, gently, without judgment, guide it back to the simple sensory experience of the present moment. Back to the chair, back to the light, back to the sounds. That is all. 5 minutes. It may feel strange at first. It may even feel difficult. The urge to do something is a powerful habit, but in practicing this, you are cultivating the muscle of stopping. You are carving out a small sanctuary of being in a life of constant doing. You are practicing the art of noticing the strawberry. One of the greatest obstacles to stopping is the persistent belief that everything is urgent. Our to-do lists are long. Our inboxes are full, and the world seems to demand our constant attention. We run because we believe we must, but the deliberate pause allows us to question this belief. When you step off the treadmill, even for 5 minutes, you gain perspective. You can look at the tasks and demands with a clearer eye. You begin to differentiate between the genuinely important and the merely urgent. How many of the things that felt like a crisis last week even register in your mind today? How much of our frantic activity is driven not by genuine need, but by a conditioned fear of falling behind, a fear of what others might think, a fear of the discomfort of sitting with ourselves? Stopping reveals that the race we are in is often one of our own creation. The finish line is an illusion we keep projecting into the future. By learning to stop, we learn that the point of life is not to reach the finish line, but to be fully alive on the path. It is to walk with dignity, to notice the world around us, and to taste the sweetness of the journey. This art of stopping is not an escape from your life. It is your doorway into it. It is the quiet space between the frantic notes of your day, and it is in that space that the real music of your life can be heard. And as we sit in this newfound quiet, having paused our frantic chase, we can begin to notice something that has been with us all along, a steady, faithful rhythm that anchors us directly in the here and now. We can begin to notice the gentle, constant miracle of our own breath. In the quiet space created by the art of stopping, a new awareness can begin to dawn. When we cease our frantic outward movement, our attention can finally turn inward. And what is the first thing we meet when we arrive in this inner landscape? It is the breath. It is the most intimate, constant, and overlooked companion of our lives. From the very first cry that announced our arrival in this world, to the gentle rise and fall of this very moment, the breath has been our faithful partner. It has asked for nothing, and it has given us everything. It is the rhythm of life itself, the silent, tireless engine that fuels our existence. Yet, for most of our lives, we are almost completely unaware of it. We treat it like the air itself, essential but invisible, only noticing it when it is threatened or taken away. To rediscover the breath is to rediscover a fundamental truth about who we are. It is to find the most reliable anchor in the midst of life's turbulent seas. The mind is a time traveler. It loves to journey into the past, replaying old scenes, analyzing conversations, and bathing in the warm glow of nostalgia or the cold shadow of regret. It also loves to rocket into the future, constructing elaborate plans, worrying about potential disasters, and chasing after distant hopes. This constant travel is exhausting. It pulls us away from the only place where life is actually happening, which is right here, right now. The breath, however, is not a time traveler. The breath is a master of the present moment. It knows no other home. Think about this. You cannot breathe tomorrow's air. You cannot take a breath that belongs to next week. Nor can you go back and re-breathe the air of yesterday. Each breath is a singular, unique event, happening in the absolute present. To bring your awareness to your breath is to bring your whole self back to this moment. It is to drop anchor when the winds of anxiety begin to blow and the waves of memory threaten to capsize you. The breath is the heavy, steady anchor that can hold you fast. By focusing on the simple, physical sensation of air entering and leaving your body, you tether your wandering mind to a tangible reality. The anchor doesn't stop the storm, but it keeps the boat from being swept away into the open ocean. The invitation of this practice is one of profound simplicity. It is an invitation to observe your breath without trying to change it. This is perhaps one of the most difficult parts of the practice, because our modern mind is a mind that wants to fix, to control, to improve, and to manage. When we first turn our attention to our breath, we might immediately judge it. It's too shallow. I should be breathing more deeply. Am I doing this right? This is the voice of the manager, the internal critic. The practice asks us to gently set that voice aside. The instruction is not to do anything to the breath. The instruction is simply to be with it, to feel it, to notice its qualities without labeling them as good or bad. Is your breath fast and shallow right now? That's okay. Simply notice. The breath is fast and shallow. Is it deep and slow? Wonderful. Notice. The breath is deep and slow. In this simple act of non-judgmental observation, we are cultivating the seed of acceptance. We are learning, in a very direct and embodied way, to allow reality to be exactly as it is. We are so used to resisting what is, to fighting against our present experience. But in watching the breath, we practice surrender. We let the breath breathe itself. And in doing so, we learn to let our life live itself, without our constant, anxious interference. The breath is more than just an anchor. It is also a bridge. It is the sacred bridge that connects the world of the mind to the world of the body. Usually, these two realms are divorced from one another. The body is here, sitting in a chair, while the mind is miles away, lost in a thought. This separation is a source of great stress and disconnection. The breath is what calls them back together. It reunites them in the present moment. Notice the undeniable link. When your mind is agitated or fearful, your breath becomes quick and constricted. When you receive shocking news, you might gasp or hold your breath entirely. The mind directly influences the body, but this bridge runs in both directions. When you consciously bring a gentle, soft, and kind awareness to your breath, allowing it to naturally settle and deepen, you send a powerful message of safety and peace back to your mind. As the breath slows, the heart rate calms, The tense muscles in your shoulders begin to release. The mind, seeing that the body is safe, begins to believe that it is also safe. It begins to let go of its frantic chatter. To follow the breath is to walk across that bridge, to bring your whole self, body, and mind back to your true home in the here and now. There is a story of a young, ambitious monk who sought out a great Zen master. He was full of intellectual knowledge, having studied all the sacred texts, and he was eager to receive the master's secret teaching, the final key to enlightenment. He bowed before the old master and asked, "Venerable sir, what must I do to awaken?" The master looked at the young monk's eager face, and after a long silence, he said, "Go to the meditation hall, find your cushion, and for the next 3 years, I want you to do only one thing. I want you to watch your breath. Watch it as it comes in. Watch it as it goes out. When your mind wanders away, notice that it has wandered and gently bring it back. That is all." The young monk was stunned and deeply disappointed. He had expected a complex philosophical teaching, a secret mantra, a profound riddle. Just watch the breath. It seemed too simple, too mundane. But, being a devoted student, he obeyed. The first year was agony. His mind was like a wild horse, bucking and kicking against the discipline. It wandered everywhere, and he spent the entire year in a state of constant frustration, endlessly chasing his thoughts. The second year was different. The horse was becoming tamed. There were moments, fleeting at first, then longer, of pure, undisturbed quiet, where there was only the breath, coming in, going out. He began to taste a deep peace he had never known. Then, one day, in the third year, as he sat in the quiet hall, simply following the sensation of the air at the tip of his nose, a profound realization bloomed within him. In the utter simplicity of the in-breath and the out-breath, he saw the entire universe. He saw impermanence in the coming and going of each breath. He saw interconnectedness in the air that connected him to the trees and the sky. He saw the nature of his own mind, constantly arising and passing away. He was awakened. The secret was not in the breath. The secret was in the qualities that were cultivated by staying with it. Patience, acceptance, gentleness, and an unwavering commitment to the present moment. So now, let us practice this together. In this very moment, you do not need to be a monk, and you do not need 3 years. You only need this breath, right now. You don't need to change how you are sitting. You don't need to do anything at all. Simply bring your attention, gently, to the fact that you are breathing. Can you feel the physical sensation of the breath? Perhaps you feel it most clearly at the entrance of your nostrils, a subtle coolness as the air comes in, and a subtle warmth as it goes out. Just rest your attention there, as if it were a gate, and you are the gatekeeper, simply noticing who comes in and who goes out. You can even use a silent, mental note. As you breathe in, you can say to yourself, in. As you breathe out, you can say to yourself, out. In, out. So simple, so gentle. Inevitably, your mind will wander. A thought will arise. A sound will distract you. A memory will surface. This is not a mistake. It is not a failure. It is simply what the mind does. The moment you realize your attention has drifted is a moment of victory. In that moment of realizing, you are already present again. Don't be frustrated with yourself. Be kind. Imagine your attention is a small puppy that has wandered off. You wouldn't scold it. You would gently take it by the scruff of its neck and kindly, patiently guide it back. In the same way, gently and kindly escort your attention back to the breath, back to the gate of the nostrils, back to in and out. Each time you do this, you are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. You are learning to be your own best friend. This breath is your most portable, most faithful anchor. It is available to you in any situation. When you are stuck in traffic, when you are in a difficult meeting, when you are waiting in line, you can always return to this simple, quiet practice. No one even needs to know you are doing it. It is your silent sanctuary, your secret wellspring of peace. It costs nothing, and it is always here. It is the thread that can lead you out of the maze of your anxious thinking and back to the solid ground of reality. And now, as we rest here, anchored in the present by the rhythm of our breathing, we may begin to notice something else. In the quiet space we have created, a subtle but persistent voice may begin to make itself heard. It is a voice of judgment, of expectation. It is the voice that tells us who we are supposed to be, what we ought to be doing, and how we are failing to measure up. It is the voice of the inner tyrant, the master of the shoulds. As we become more settled, we are now able to see this voice more clearly, not as an undeniable truth, but as another pattern of thought to be observed with wisdom and compassion. As you settle into the stillness, anchored by the gentle rhythm of your breath, you may begin to hear it. It is a subtle narration, a constant commentator in the back of your mind. It speaks with the voice of authority, a voice so familiar that you assume it is your own. This is the voice of the inner tyrant, the master of the shoulds and the musts. It is a tireless judge, holding up an impossible standard of perfection and constantly pointing out the ways in which you fall short. It whispers, "You should be more productive today." It insists, "You shouldn't feel sad, you have a good life." It demands, "You must work harder, be smarter, look better." This voice is the source of a deep and pervasive anxiety, a feeling of never quite being good enough, of always being one step behind where you are supposed to be. It is the heaviest, most invisible burden that we carry. To find freedom, we must first unmask this tyrant. We must understand that this voice is not the fundamental truth of who we are. It is a construct, a collage of second-hand opinions and beliefs that we have absorbed throughout our lives. It is the voice of our parents, our teachers, our culture, and the media, all internalized and recorded, playing on a continuous loop inside our own minds. It is a ghost, assembled from the expectations of others. When we were children, these voices were meant to guide us, to keep us safe. But as adults, we often carry them forward without question, allowing them to dictate our worth and happiness. The practice of mindfulness, of watching our own minds with gentle curiosity, allows us to see this voice for what it is. It is not a commander to be obeyed, but simply a thought to be observed. Just as you watch a cloud drift across the sky, you can learn to watch the thought, "I should be more successful," arise in your mind, and then drift away, without having to believe it, without having to attach to it. In seeing it as an external object, a piece of mental weather, you begin to reclaim your power from it. You realize, this is just the should story again. You are no longer the prisoner of the thought. You are the spacious awareness in which the thought appears. It is important, on this path, to draw a clear distinction between the tyranny of the shoulds and the gentle call of healthy aspiration. This teaching is not an invitation to apathy or an excuse to abandon all efforts to grow. A desire to be a kinder person, a more patient parent, or a healthier individual is a beautiful and wholesome aspiration. It comes from a place of love. Aspiration is like a gardener tending to a beloved plant, providing water, sunlight, and care, allowing it to grow naturally towards the light. The tyranny of the shoulds, on the other hand, comes from a place of fear. It is like a harsh drill sergeant, screaming that you are worthless and that you must force yourself into a specific shape, a shape that is not your own. Aspiration is a joyful pull towards a brighter future. The shoulds are a violent push from a painful past. Aspiration says, I wonder if I could learn to be more compassionate. It is open, curious, and kind to the process. The tyrant says, you must be compassionate, and you are a failure for every time you are not. It is rigid, judgmental, and cruel. Learning to tell the difference between these two voices is a profound act of self-love. It is learning to trust the gentle gardener within you and to politely, but firmly, dismiss the drill sergeant. There is a timeless Zen story that illustrates this freedom perfectly. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were traveling together on a long pilgrimage. They walked in silence for many miles until they came to a river. The current was swift, and a recent rain had made the water high and the banks muddy. On their side of the river stood a young woman in a beautiful silk kimono, looking distressed. She was clearly afraid to cross, worried she would ruin her clothes and be swept away by the current. The junior monk, being very pious and a strict observer of their monastic vows, took one look at the situation, remembered the rule that a monk must never touch a woman, and proceeded to wade across the river by himself, never looking back. The senior monk, however, paused. He saw the woman's genuine fear and predicament. Without a word, he walked over to her, bent down, and gestured for her to climb onto his back. She did so, and he carefully carried her across the churning river, placing her gently down on the dry ground of the opposite bank. She bowed to him in gratitude, and he simply nodded and continued on his journey. The junior monk, having watched all of this, was seething. He was filled with righteous indignation. For hours, they walked on in silence, but the junior monk's mind was a storm of judgment. He replayed the scene over and over, his anger growing with every step. Finally, unable to contain himself any longer, he burst out, "Brother, how could you do that? You know our vows. We are forbidden to even look at a woman for too long, let alone touch one. You picked her up and carried her in your arms. You have broken our most sacred precept." The senior monk stopped walking, turned to his younger companion, and looked at him with a calm, compassionate expression. He said softly, "Brother, I set that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story is a powerful teaching on the nature of our mental burdens. The junior monk is a perfect picture of a person living under the tyranny of the shoulds. He is so bound by a rigid, external rule that he is unable to respond to the reality of the present moment with simple human kindness. And, more importantly, long after the event is over, he continues to carry it. His mind is heavy with judgment, with anger, with the story of a wrongdoing. He is not free. The senior monk represents liberation. He was not bound by the letter of the law, but guided by its spirit, which is compassion. He saw a person in need, and he responded. But the most profound part of his wisdom was his ability to let go. Once the action was complete, it was finished. He did not carry it with him. His mind was light, clear, and present. We are all, in our own ways, like the junior monk. We carry things for far too long. We carry the memory of a mistake we made last week. We carry a harsh word someone said to us last year. We carry the feeling of not living up to our own or others' expectations. We are weighed down by the ghosts of 1,000 shoulds. The invitation is to learn to set them down, to leave them on the riverbank where they belong. How do we do this? We do it by cultivating self-compassion, When you notice the voice of the inner critic rising up, when you feel the familiar sting of not being good enough, the first step is to simply acknowledge it with mindfulness. There is the feeling of inadequacy. Then, instead of either believing the voice or trying to fight it, you can offer yourself a moment of kindness. You can place a hand on your own heart and say, silently, to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. It is painful to feel this way. This simple act acknowledges your pain without judgment. Then, you can offer yourself the same words you might offer a friend. It is okay. You are only human. You are doing the best you can. This is not about making excuses. It is about replacing the harsh voice of the inner tyrant with the gentle voice of a friend. It is the medicine that soothes the wound of self-judgment. Over time, as you practice this, the tyrant's voice will begin to lose its power. The gardener's voice will grow stronger. Ultimately, the escape from this tyranny lies in the radical and profound acceptance of enough, the belief that you are fundamentally worthy and whole, right here, right now, not in the future, when you have achieved some external goal, not in the past, before you made that mistake, but now, in this breath, with your messy, imperfect, beautiful, and completely human life. This is not a state of lazy complacency. On the contrary, it is the most powerful foundation for authentic growth. When you act from a place of, I am not enough, your actions are frantic, needy, and driven by fear. You are always trying to prove yourself. But when you act from a solid foundation of, I am already enough, your actions become an expression of that wholeness. They are calmer, wiser, and more joyful. You can take risks because your self-worth is not on the line. You can be generous because you are not operating from a place of scarcity. You can finally relax by letting go of the heavy burden of shoulds. By setting the woman down at the riverbank, we find a new lightness in our being. Our minds become less cluttered, our hearts less defended. We are more present to the world as it is. And in this new clarity, we begin to notice something even more profound. We notice that the very world we have been trying so hard to control, the very self we have been trying so hard to perfect, is not as solid and fixed as we believed. The standards change, our feelings change, our bodies change, the world changes. We realize we have been trying to build a permanent home on ever-shifting ground. This dawning awareness that everything is in a state of constant flow leads us to the heart of one of Buddhism's most liberating insights, the truth of impermanence. Having set down the heavy burden of the shoulds, we find ourselves in a space of greater lightness and clarity. Our minds, no longer policed by an inner tyrant, are free to observe the world with a gentler, more curious gaze. And from this vantage point, we begin to notice a fundamental truth, one that underpins all of existence. We notice that nothing is solid. Nothing stays the same. We have spent our lives trying to build on what we believed was solid ground, only to realize we are living on the banks of a ceaselessly flowing river. This is the profound and liberating truth of impermanence. In the ancient language of the Buddha, it is called anicca. It is the universal law of change. Our human instinct is to resist this truth. We are creatures who crave certainty and stability. We build stone houses, sign long-term contracts, and make promises of forever. We try to create small islands of permanence in the great river of time. We take a photograph of a happy moment and believe we can capture the happiness itself. We fall in love and try to freeze the relationship in its perfect initial stage. We achieve a goal and wish for the feeling of satisfaction to last indefinitely. This is a very natural, very human desire, but it is also the source of our deepest suffering. The friction between our desire for things to stay the same and the undeniable reality that they are always changing creates a constant state of tension, disappointment, and anxiety. It is like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The tighter we squeeze, the faster it slips through our fingers. The spiritual path does not teach us how to build a better dam to stop the river. It teaches us how to let go of the shore and learn to swim. We don't need to look far to see the truth of impermanence. We can observe it intimately within our own being. Consider your thoughts. Where is the thought you had 5 minutes ago? It arose. Perhaps it lingered for a moment, and then it dissolved, making way for the next one. Your mind is like the sky, and your thoughts are like the clouds, drifting in and out of view. Some are dark and stormy, others are light and wispy, but none of them are permanent fixtures. The mistake we make is to identify with the clouds, to believe we are the storm. Mindfulness teaches us to rest in the nature of the sky, itself spacious, open, and untouched by the clouds that pass through it. Consider your emotions. No feeling is final. Joy visits you, fills your heart, and then, in its own time, it subsides. Sadness arrives, washes over you, and it too, eventually, recedes. Anger can flare like a fire, but no fire burns forever without fuel. Peace can settle upon you like a soft blanket, but it will also shift and change. We often make the mistake of clinging to pleasant feelings and resisting unpleasant ones. When we are happy, we worry about when it will end. When we are sad, we fear it will last forever. This clinging and resisting is what causes our suffering. The wisdom of impermanence invites us to treat our feelings like honored guests. We open the door, we allow them to enter, we listen to what they have to say, and we trust that they will leave when their visit is over. By allowing them to flow freely, we are no longer at their mercy. Even your physical body is a testament to this constant flow. You are not a static object, you are a process. Millions of your cells are dying and being replaced in this very moment. The air you are breathing in becomes a part of you, and the air you breathe out returns to the world. You are, quite literally, not the same person you were a year ago, or even a moment ago. You are a river of life, constantly renewing itself. To cling to a past version of yourself, to a youthful image, or a time when you felt stronger, is to deny the beautiful, dynamic nature of what you are. There is no story that teaches this lesson more powerfully than that of a woman named Kisa Gotami. She was a young mother in the time of the Buddha, and her love for her infant son was her entire world. One day, tragedy struck, and the child fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami was consumed by a grief so powerful that it drove her to madness. She refused to accept that her son was gone. She picked up his small, lifeless body and went from door to door throughout her village, begging for a medicine that could restore him. Some people turned away from her. Others mocked her madness. Most, however, looked upon her with pity. Finally, one kind man, seeing her inconsolable pain, suggested, "I have no medicine for you, but I know of a great physician. Go and see the Buddha. He may be able to help you." Clutching her child, Kisa Gotami ran to find the Buddha. She bowed at his feet, laid her son before him, and told her story through a flood of tears, pleading with him to perform a miracle. The Buddha looked at her with boundless compassion and said, "I can help you, but to make the medicine, I require a special ingredient. I need you to bring me a single mustard seed from a house in the village where no one has ever died." Kisa Gotami's heart soared with hope. A single mustard seed. That was an easy task. She thanked the Buddha profusely and immediately set off. She went to the first house and knocked on the door. The Buddha, has sent me," she explained. "I need a mustard seed to make a medicine that will cure my son." The woman of the house was happy to help and went to fetch one. As she was about to hand it over, Kisa Gautami asked, "Just one more thing. Has anyone in this house ever known death? A parent, a child, a spouse?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said sadly, "the living in this house are few. The dead are many. Please do not remind me of my deepest sorrow." Disappointed, Kisa Gautami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Every family was willing to give her a mustard seed, but every family had been touched by death. One had lost a husband, another a daughter, another a beloved parent. As she walked from door to door, a profound change began to take place within her. Her frantic, personal, isolating grief began to soften and expand. She saw that her pain was not unique. Loss was not a special punishment, visited only upon her. It was the shared, universal condition of all human beings. Her heart, once a tight fist of personal agony, began to open. She saw her own sorrow reflected in the eyes of everyone she met. As dusk fell, she sat by the side of the road, the body of her son still in her arms. She looked at the flickering lights of the village, appearing and disappearing in the twilight. She understood. "How selfish I have been in my grief," she thought. "This is the law of life. Like the lights of the village, lives flicker up and are extinguished." She carried her son to the cremation ground, laid him to rest, and returned to the Buddha. The Buddha looked at her and asked, "Did you bring the mustard seed?" She shook her head. "The work is done, Lord," she said. "I have understood the teaching. The dead are more numerous than the living." In that moment of profound acceptance, of impermanence, her healing began. The Buddha's genius was that he did not give her a lecture. He gave her an experience. He allowed her to discover the truth for herself. This is how we must learn it, too, by looking deeply into our own lives. The wisdom of impermanence has two practical applications that can transform our experience. In times of pain, sorrow, or difficulty, it is a source of profound comfort. We can gently remind ourselves, "This too shall pass." This does not invalidate our pain or dismiss it. It simply places it in a larger context. It is a season, and like all seasons, it will change. This awareness can prevent us from falling into the pit of despair, from believing that the darkness will last forever. Conversely, in times of joy, beauty, and love, the wisdom of impermanence is a clarion call to presence. It urges us to cherish the moment because it is precious and fleeting. It is the understanding that a beautiful sunset cannot be saved for later. A joyful laugh cannot be bottled. A moment of deep connection must be savored as it happens. This awareness prevents us from taking our happiness for granted. It infuses our good moments with a deeper richness and a profound sense of gratitude. To embrace impermanence is to finally stop fighting with reality. It is to accept that life is a dance, not a statue. There is an incredible beauty in this flow. A piece of music is beautiful because of the arising and passing away of notes. A flower is cherished because its bloom is temporary. To try and hold on to one note would destroy the symphony. To try and make a flower immortal would be to turn it into plastic. The very aliveness of life is in its constant changing. By learning to let go of our rigid grip, we can begin to move with the current of life, to dance with it. This acceptance allows us to see our world with new eyes. But it also brings us face to face with the underlying reason why we resist change so fiercely. We resist it because change so often involves loss, disappointment, and the simple fact that life is never perfectly permanently satisfying. This universal feeling of unease, this subtle background hum of dissatisfaction that comes with living in a constantly shifting world, has a name. It is the starting point for a deeper understanding of our human condition. It is the truth of dukkha. When we learn to dance with the truth of impermanence, a certain peace begins to settle in our hearts. We stop fighting the river and learn to move with its current. Yet, this very acceptance brings us face to face with a deeper, more fundamental aspect of the human condition. The fact that things change means that happiness is fleeting. The fact that we are all part of this flow means that loss is inevitable. Living in a world that never provides us with permanent security or lasting satisfaction creates a subtle, underlying hum of unease. This is the starting point of the Buddha's teachings, a concept often translated from the ancient Pali language as suffering. But this single English word is too harsh, too heavy, to capture the profound and nuanced meaning of the original term, dukkha. To hear the phrase "life is suffering" can feel pessimistic, even bleak. It sounds like a condemnation of life itself. But this is a deep misunderstanding. The teaching on dukkha is not a metaphysical judgment on the value of life. It is a practical, compassionate diagnosis of our common experience. Think of it like a doctor telling you, "You have a fever." This is not a judgment on your character. It is a clear-eyed statement of fact, offered so that you can understand your condition and find the right medicine. Dukkha is the fever of the human mind. It doesn't just refer to the acute agony of tragedy, grief, or physical pain. It encompasses a vast spectrum of experience. It is the stress of a looming deadline. It is the anxiety you feel in a crowded room. It is the subtle disappointment when a pleasant meal is over. It is the vague restlessness you feel on a Sunday evening. The sense that something is not quite right, that something is missing. It is the inherent out-of-jointness of trying to find lasting happiness in a world that is always changing. We can understand dukkha in 3 layers. The first is the most obvious, the dukkha of pain. This is physical pain, like a headache or a chronic illness. It is emotional pain, like the grief of losing a loved one or the sting of rejection. This is the clear, undeniable suffering that no one can escape. The second layer is the dukkha of change. This is the suffering that arises because pleasant experiences are impermanent. You have a wonderful vacation, and then you feel a sense of loss when it ends and you have to go back to work. You achieve a long-sought goal, and the initial euphoria fades, leaving you feeling empty again. This is the stress that comes from clinging to happiness, from trying to hold on to moments that, by their very nature, must pass. The third layer is the most subtle, and perhaps the most pervasive. It is the dukkha of conditioned existence. This is the baseline, background hum of dissatisfaction that is woven into the very fabric of our lives. It's the feeling of being a separate, vulnerable self in a complex, unpredictable world. It's the low-grade anxiety that fuels our constant need for distraction, for entertainment, for noise, for anything to keep us from having to sit quietly with the simple fact of our own existence. This is the fundamental fever that the teachings seek to address. To understand how we can work with this condition, the Buddha offered a simple yet incredibly profound parable. The story of the second arrow. He once asked his followers, "If a person is walking and is struck by an arrow, is it painful?" They replied, "Yes, Master, it is very painful." The Buddha then asked, "And if that person, already wounded, is struck by a second arrow in the very same spot, is it not even more painful?" "Yes, Master," they said, "it is doubly painful." The Buddha then explained, "In life," he said, "we cannot always avoid the first arrow. The first arrow is the unavoidable pain of life itself. It is sickness, injury, loss, old age, and death. It is being misunderstood. It is being stuck in traffic. It is your friend letting you down. These things are part of the landscape of human existence. They happen to everyone, without exception. No amount of meditation or positive thinking can make you completely immune to the first arrow. But the second arrow, he continued, is the one we shoot at ourselves. The second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the arrow of our mind. The first arrow strikes, and then we immediately fire the second arrow of, why me? The second arrow of, this shouldn't be happening. The second arrow of, my life is ruined now. It is the arrow of blame, of self-pity, of rage, of fear, of catastrophic thinking. The actual pain of the first arrow might last only a short while, but the suffering created by the second arrow can go on for days, weeks, or even a lifetime. We create elaborate stories around our pain, replaying it, analyzing it, feeding it, and wondering why it won't go away. The Buddha's liberating insight was this: the second arrow is optional. While we may not have complete control over the first arrow, we have a choice about the second. Our entire spiritual practice can be seen as the training of the heart and mind to no longer shoot that second arrow. Let us bring this down to our own experience. Imagine you are driving to an important appointment and you get stuck in a massive traffic jam. The first arrow is the simple, objective fact of the situation. You are in your car and it is not moving. This is inconvenient. It is unpleasant, but it is, in itself, just a set of circumstances. Now, watch for the second arrow. The mind begins its commentary. This is a nightmare. I'm going to be late. They are going to be so angry with me. I can't believe my luck. This always happens to me. My whole day is ruined. You can feel the tension building in your shoulders, your jaw clenching, your heart rate increasing. This storm of reactivity, this is the second arrow. It is the layer of mental suffering you are adding on top of the initial inconvenience. The practice of mindfulness allows you to feel the discomfort of the first arrow, the frustration, the impatience, without launching the second arrow of a dramatic mental story. You can learn to sit in the car, feel the feeling of being stuck, breathe, and simply be with the reality of the moment, as unpleasant as it may be. So why do we do this? Why are we so quick to shoot ourselves with this second arrow? It stems from the mind's most deeply ingrained habit, the twin forces of clinging and aversion. We are constantly scanning our experience, labeling it as good, bad, or neutral. When we experience something we label as good, a delicious taste, a moment of praise, a feeling of comfort, we cling to it. We try to grasp it, to hold on to it, to make it last. The suffering of change, the viparinama dukkha, arises when it inevitably fades. When we experience something we label as bada, physical pain, a harsh criticism, a feeling of fear, we have an aversion to it. We try to push it away, to deny it, to escape it. The second arrow is the weapon we use in this constant battle, this futile war we wage against the natural unfolding of reality. The path to transforming this suffering, therefore, is a radical one. It is not about creating a life where there are no first arrows. It is about changing our relationship to them. It is about learning to turn towards our discomfort with a courageous and gentle curiosity, instead of automatically running away. When a difficult feeling like anxiety arises, instead of immediately distracting yourself, what if you could pause? What if you could turn your attention inward and ask, what does this actually feel like in my body? Where is it located? Is it in my chest, my stomach? Is it a vibration? a tightness, a heat. Is it moving, or is it still? What if you could notice the stories the mind is telling about this feeling without necessarily believing them? When you investigate your dukkha in this way, with the gentle precision of a scientist, it begins to lose its power. It is no longer a big, scary monster named anxiety. It reveals itself to be a collection of changing physical sensations and temporary thoughts. You are no longer drowning in the river. You are sitting on the bank, watching it flow by. Your suffering becomes your greatest teacher. It shows you exactly where you are holding on, exactly where you are resisting, exactly where your work lies. The first noble truth, the truth of dukkha, is therefore not a message of despair. It is a message of profound hope and empowerment. It hands the key to our freedom back to us. It tells us that the source of our deepest, most persistent unhappiness is not the fault of the world, our circumstances, or other people. The source is in our own minds. It is in our habit of shooting the second arrow. This is incredibly good news, because while we cannot always change the world, we can, with patience and practice, learn to change our own minds. Understanding that our suffering comes from our own habits of clinging and aversion leads us to the most natural and vital question on this path. If my suffering is caused by my holding on, then how, exactly, do I learn to let go? Having looked deeply into the nature of our unease, our dukkha, we have arrived at a crucial diagnosis. Our suffering is not caused by the events of our lives, but by our clinging to them. It is the second arrow, the one we shoot at ourselves. It is the relentless habit of holding on to what is pleasant and pushing away what is unpleasant. We now stand at the threshold of a profound practice, the very heart of the path to freedom. If holding on is the cause of our suffering, then the cure, the medicine, is the gentle and courageous art of letting go. In our culture, the idea of letting go is often misunderstood. It can sound like failure, like passive surrender, or giving up. We are taught to hold on, to persevere, to grip tighter when things get tough. But in the context of spiritual wisdom, letting go is an act of immense strength and profound intelligence. It is not about apathy or forgetting the past. It is about refusing to allow the past to poison the present. It is the conscious choice to release what is no longer serving us, what is weighing us down, in order to make space for peace, healing, and new growth. Imagine you are holding a hot coal in your hand. Letting go is not an act of weakness. It is an act of simple, obvious wisdom. We spend so much of our lives clutching hot coal sore anger, our grievances, our anxieties, and wondering why we are in pain. Letting go is the moment we decide to open our hand and find relief. What is it, exactly, that we are holding on to so tightly? If we look into our own hearts with honesty, we will find a vast collection of things we are gripping. We cling to our possessions, believing our security and identity are tied to what we own. We cling to past hurts, replaying old arguments in our minds, nursing grudges like treasured possessions. We do this because our sense of being the victim, of being wronged, can give us a strange and powerful sense of identity. We hold on to rigid ideas about who we are. I am a successful person. I am a creative person. I am an anxious person. We cling to these labels because they feel solid, but they are actually cages that prevent us from evolving. We cling to our expectations of other people, wanting them to behave in ways that suit us, and then we suffer when they inevitably act according to their own nature. We cling to our carefully constructed plans for the future, and then feel immense anxiety and disappointment when the river of life takes an unexpected turn. In all these ways, our lives are defined by the clenching of our fists. There is a powerful story that comes from India about how hunters trap monkeys. They take a coconut or a hollowed-out gourd and drill a hole in it, just large enough for a monkey to slide its open hand inside. They place some rice or a sweet treat inside the gourd and then tie it securely to a tree. Sooner or later, a monkey will come along, drawn by the scent of the food. It will slip its slender hand through the hole, grasp the prize, and clench its hand into a fist. But now, it has a problem. The hole was big enough for an open hand to enter, but it is too small for a closed fist to exit. The monkey is now trapped. It will pull and tug, screech and fight for hours. It believes it is a prisoner of the gourd, but it is not. The gourd is not holding the monkey. The monkey's own fist, its own attachment to the rice, is what holds it captive. The trap is its own clinging. At any moment, all the monkey has to do to be free is to open its hand, release the rice, and slip its hand out. But its desire, its attachment, is so powerful, so all-consuming, that it simply cannot let go, and so it remains there, a prisoner of its own fist, until the hunters return. We are all, in so many ways, that monkey. The rice is whatever we are clinging to. Our need to be right, our anger at an old injustice, our attachment to a specific outcome, our story about ourselves. The gourd is the situation we find ourselves in. We feel trapped by our job, by our relationship, by our circumstances. But the true trap is our own unwillingness to open our hand. Freedom is always, in every moment, available to us. It is as simple and as profoundly difficult as letting go of the rice, to let go of the need to win the argument, to let go of the anger that is only poisoning ourselves, to let go of the future we had planned, and embrace the future that is actually arriving. This story shows us with startling clarity that we are the architects of our own cages, and we also hold the key. The key is the willingness to release our grip. So how do we practice this? How do we learn to open our hand? We can begin with the mind, using the tools of mindfulness. Let us return to the image of the mind as a vast open sky. Our thoughts and feelings are the clouds that drift through it. When a difficult feeling, like resentment, arises, that is our fistful of rice. Our habitual tendency is to either chase after it, analyzing it and feeding its story, or to try and violently push it away. The practice of letting go offers a third option. First, we simply notice it. The cloud of resentment has appeared in my sky. We acknowledge its presence without judgment. Then, we can connect this awareness to our breath. As you breathe in, you can acknowledge the feeling. Breathing in, I know resentment is here. This is not an affirmation. It is a simple, honest recognition. As you breathe out, you can practice the release. Breathing out, I am letting go of my need to hold on to this. You can visualize the cloud of resentment slowly drifting away on the out-breath, dissolving back into the vastness of the sky. You are not forcing it to go. You are simply ceasing to hold on to it. You are unclenching the fist of your mind. This mental practice can be powerfully supported by a physical one. Notice where in your body you hold on to things. When you are angry or stressed, is your jaw tight? Are your shoulders raised towards your ears? Is your stomach in a knot? Are your hands literally clenched into fists? As you breathe out, consciously release that physical tension. Allow your jaw to soften. Allow your shoulders to drop. Allow the muscles in your abdomen to relax. Allow your hands to open, palms up, in a gesture of release and surrender. The body and mind are deeply connected. By releasing the tension in your body, you send a powerful signal to your mind that it is safe to let go. This is not a one-time fix. It is a continuous practice, a moment-by-moment choice. The cloud of resentment may return, and when it does, you simply meet it again with the same gentle practice. You acknowledge it, and you let it go. Each time you do this, its grip on you weakens. As you begin to practice this art of letting go, you will start to notice a profound shift in your experience of life. You will feel a new sense of lightness. Imagine you have been hiking for years with a heavy backpack filled with rocks. Each rock is a grievance, a worry, an attachment you have been carrying. You have become so used to the weight that you have forgotten what it feels like to walk without it. Every time you truly let go of something, it is like taking one of those heavy rocks out of your pack and leaving it on the side of the trail. The path ahead may still have its hills and valleys, but your journey becomes immeasurably easier, more spacious, and more joyful. You begin to realize that you do not have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You can travel light. This is the freedom the monkey could not find. It is the freedom of the open hand. It is the practical, tangible result of applying the wisdom of impermanence and dukkha to our lives. It is a continuous process of unburdening ourselves, of clearing out the inner clutter so that we can see the world and ourselves with greater clarity. But in order to see what we are holding on to, and to have the wisdom to release it, we need a particular quality of mind. We need a mind that is not already full of its own conclusions, a mind that is not hardened by its own expertise. We need a mind that is fresh, open, curious, and ready to see things as if for the first time. This brings us to our next step, the vital practice of cultivating a beginner's mind. Having learned to open our hands, to release the hot coals of our grievances and attachments, we discover a new lightness in our being. But there is another kind of holding on, one that is more subtle and often more stubborn. It is the clenching of the mind. We hold tightly to our opinions, our beliefs, our conclusions, and our past experiences. We walk through life with a mind that is already full, a cup that is brimming with what we think we already know. This is the expert mind, and while it can be useful for navigating practical tasks, it can be the greatest single obstacle to truly experiencing the fullness and wonder of life. The next step on our journey, therefore, is to learn the art of emptying our cup. In the Zen tradition, there is a concept known as Shoshin, which translates as beginner's mind. The great Zen master, Shunryu Suzuki, described it this way: in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. Beginner's mind is the quality of approaching experience with openness, eagerness, and a lack of preconceptions. It is the mind of a child seeing a butterfly for the first time, not yet knowing its name or classification, but being completely captivated by the vibrant color and delicate movement of its wings. It is a state of pure wonder. The expert mind, by contrast, sees the butterfly and immediately labels it. That is a monarch, a Danaus plexippus. The label is correct, but in the act of labeling, the direct, wondrous experience is often lost. The expert mind has replaced the living reality with a dead concept. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates this principle. A very learned and famous university professor, an expert on world religions, came to visit an old Zen master named Nanin to learn about Zen. From the moment he arrived, the professor dominated the conversation, showcasing his vast knowledge. As the master tried to speak, the professor would interrupt, saying, "Oh yes, That reminds me of this philosophical concept, or I have read about that in the ancient texts. He came to learn, but he was not open to receiving. He was a full cup. Master Nanin listened patiently, and then suggested they have some tea. He brought out the tea set, placed a cup in front of the professor, and began to pour. He filled the cup to the brim, and then, without stopping, he continued to pour. Hot tea spilled out of the cup, ran into the saucer, and then began to pool on the table. The professor watched in alarm, and finally shouted, "Stop! It is full! No more will go in." Master Nanin stopped pouring, looked the professor in the eye, and said calmly, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you anything about Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story is a profound teaching. It tells us that to truly learn, to truly grow, to truly experience the freshness of this moment, we must be willing to set aside what we think we know. We must cultivate a humble willingness to be a beginner again. The world is constantly new, constantly changing. It is only our old expert minds that make it seem stale and repetitive. The danger of the expert mind is that it creates a filter between us and reality. It projects a film of past experiences onto the present moment. We don't see the person standing in front of us. We see our accumulated history of that person. We don't taste the food we are eating. We taste the memory of the last time we ate it. The expert mind makes us believe we have seen it all before. And this belief is the root of boredom and cynicism. It robs the world of its magic. The expert mind sees a tree, a general category. The beginner's mind is stunned by the reality of this tree. Right here, right now. It notices the intricate patterns on its bark, the way the sunlight filters through its unique arrangement of leaves, the sound of the wind rustling through its branches. To the beginner's mind, everything is a miracle. How, then, can we practice cultivating this precious quality in our everyday lives? We can start with our relationships. Think of a person you are very close to, a partner, a child, a parent. How often do you interact with them not as they are in this moment, but as the fixed image you hold of them in your mind? You already know what they are going to say, how they are going to react. The practice of beginner's mind is to consciously let go of that image. Try to listen to their story as if you have never heard it before. Try to look at their face and notice the subtle lines and expressions you may have overlooked. When you can meet them in this open space, free from the baggage of the past, you give the relationship a chance to breathe and to become new again. We can also apply this to the most mundane and repetitive tasks of our day. Activities like washing the dishes, brushing our teeth, or folding the laundry are often done on autopilot. Our minds a million miles away. Beginner's mind invites us to bring our full attention to these simple acts. As you wash a dish, can you feel the warmth of the water on your hands? Can you notice the smoothness of the ceramic, the texture of the sponge? Can you hear the sound of the water? To do this is to transform a boring chore into a rich sensory experience, a form of meditation. When you take a walk down a street, you have walked 1,000 times. Pretend you are seeing it for the first time. What colors do you notice? What sounds? What architectural details have you never paid attention to before? By emptying your cup of, "I already know this street," you allow the street to reveal its hidden secrets to you. At its heart, Shoshin is an attitude of profound humility. It is the recognition that our personal knowledge is but a tiny island in the vast, mysterious ocean of reality. The expert mind is arrogant. It thinks its island is the entire world. The beginner's mind is humble. It stands at the shore of its island, looking out at the boundless ocean with a sense of awe and wonder. This humility is the key that unlocks the door to continuous learning and growth. It allows us to truly listen to others, especially those with whom we disagree, because we are not just waiting for our turn to speak and prove our point. We are actually open to the possibility that we might learn something new, that our perspective might be incomplete. Letting go, then, is not only about releasing our painful emotions and grievances, it is also about releasing our most cherished and subtle attachment, our attachment to being right, to being the one who knows. It is the practice of saying, "I don't know," and being comfortable in that space of uncertainty. That space of not knowing is not a void. It is a space of infinite potential. It is the fertile ground from which all creativity, insight, and genuine connection springs. By emptying our cup, we become receptive. We allow life, in its infinite newness, to pour itself into us. This open, clear, and unbiased state of mind is the ideal vantage point from which to perceive the world accurately. When our vision is not clouded by rigid opinions or extreme beliefs, we are much more capable of seeing the subtle, delicate path of balance that runs through the heart of all things. This ability to see clearly, born from the spaciousness of a beginner's mind, naturally prepares us for the next great insight of our journey, the timeless wisdom of walking the middle way. With a mind that is open and receptive, like an empty cup, we can begin to observe our own lives with a new clarity. We can see the patterns that govern our days, often without our conscious consent. One of the most common patterns in our modern world is the violent swing of a pendulum between two extremes. We push ourselves relentlessly in our work and responsibilities, tightening the string of our being until it is close to snapping. This is the extreme of harsh effort, of burnout, of believing that our worth is measured by our productivity. Then, exhausted and depleted, the pendulum swings to the other side. We collapse into the extreme of indulgence, seeking escape in mindless entertainment, excessive food and drink, or endless scrolling through digital worlds. We swing from the extreme of self-denial to the extreme of self-gratification, back and forth, and we wonder why we feel so perpetually unbalanced, so tired, and so far from any lasting peace. This is the landscape into which the Buddha offered one of his most profound and practical teachings: the path of the middle way. This path is the very foundation of a wise and balanced life. But we must be careful with these words. The middle way does not mean a weak compromise. It is not an invitation to be mediocre, lukewarm, or to live a life devoid of passion and color. It is a noble path, a dynamic and wakeful way of navigating life that skillfully avoids the two dead-end traps of extremism. It is a path of wisdom that understands that truth, peace, and freedom are not found in either punishing the self or endlessly indulging it. They are found in a skillful and compassionate balance between the two. The story of the middle way is the story of the Buddha's own life. He was a man who lived both extremes to their absolute fullest. He was born a prince, Siddhartha Gautama, into a life of unimaginable luxury. His father, the king, shielded him from all unpleasantness. He was surrounded by beauty, music, fine food, and every sensual pleasure imaginable. He had everything that the world tells us should make us happy. Yet, in the midst of this perfect indulgence, he felt a deep and unsettling unease, a spiritual emptiness. He realized that chasing after pleasure, no matter how refined, was a dead end. It was like drinking salt water to quench a thirst. It only left him wanting more, and it never touched the deepest longing of his heart. This was his exploration of the first extreme, self-indulgence. And so, he left the palace. He renounced his wealth and status and became a wandering ascetic, determined to find the truth through the opposite extreme, self-mortification. He joined groups of ascetics who believed that by conquering the body, by punishing it, and denying its every need, they could liberate the spirit. Siddhartha threw himself into these practices with unmatched determination. He practiced extreme fasting, eating only a single grain of rice a day until his ribs stuck out like the rafters of a ruined shed. He held his breath for so long that he felt violent pains in his head and often fainted. He slept on beds of thorns and exposed his body to the harshest heat and cold. He pushed himself to the very brink of death, becoming a living skeleton. But after 6 years of this brutal self-torment, he came to another profound realization. He was no closer to enlightenment. His body was wrecked, and his mind, far from being clear, was clouded by weakness and pain. He understood that torturing the body was not the path to freeing the mind. This was his exploration of the second extreme, self-denial. One day, emaciated and near death, he collapsed by a river. A young village girl named Sujata offered him a bowl of rice milk, and recognizing the futility of his extreme practices, he accepted it. As he regained his strength, he had a vivid memory of a time in his childhood when he had been sitting peacefully and joyfully under a rose apple tree. He realized that this simple, balanced state held a clue. At that moment, a boat was passing on the river, carrying a music teacher and his student. The teacher's words drifted across the water to Siddhartha's ears. "If you tighten the string of the lute too much," the teacher said, "it will snap. If you leave it too loose, it will not play." The most beautiful music comes only when the string is tuned just right, not too tight and not too loose. In that simple instruction, Siddhartha Gautama understood everything. His life had been a lute string, first left too loose in the palace, and then tightened so much it almost snapped. The middle way was the path of the perfectly tuned string. It was the path of balance. With this newfound understanding, he sat beneath a great tree, which would come to be known as the Bodhi tree, and with a mind that was now calm, nourished, and balanced, he finally attained the profound peace of enlightenment. This metaphor of the lute string is our guide for applying the middle way in our own lives. The string that is too tight is the life of constant striving, of perfectionism, of harsh self-judgment, and relentless effort. It is the mindset of the inner drill sergeant. The string that is too loose is the life of laxity, of procrastination, of mindless indulgence, and a lack of clear intention. It is a life lived on autopilot. The beautiful music is a life of well-being, clarity, and peace, which can only arise when we learn to tune our own instrument with wisdom and care. Consider your work. The tight string is the workaholic who sacrifices their health and relationships for success. The loose string is the person who avoids responsibility and squanders their potential. The middle way is to work diligently, with focus and integrity, but also to recognize the importance of rest, to honor your limits, and to cultivate a life outside of your profession. Consider your health. The tight string is the person obsessed with restrictive diets and punishing exercise regimes, whose life is governed by anxiety about their body. The loose string is the person who completely neglects their body, eating mindlessly and living a sedentary life. The middle way is to nourish your body with wholesome food, to enjoy the pleasure of eating without guilt, and to engage in joyful movement that celebrates what your body can do, rather than punishing it for what it is not. This principle even applies to our spiritual practice itself. It is possible to approach meditation with a tight, striving mind, constantly judging our progress, frustrated by every distraction. This is tightening the string. It is also possible to be too lax, to just sit in a pleasant daze, without any real mindfulness or gentle effort. This is leaving the string loose. The middle way in practice is a kind, patient, and persistent effort. It is showing up consistently, but with a heart of gentleness and self-compassion. Walking the middle way is not about finding a single fixed point of balance and staying there forever. It is a dynamic process, a constant art of self-awareness and subtle adjustment. It requires us to be awake to our own inner state. We must continually ask ourselves, am I pushing too hard right now? Am I being too slack? It is like learning to ride a bicycle. You don't find the perfect point of balance and then freeze. You are constantly making tiny, intuitive adjustments to stay upright. This is the intelligence of the middle way. It is a path of sensitivity. True peace, the kind that is deep and resilient, is not found at the thrilling peak of an extreme experience. It is not in the momentary high of a great success or the fleeting bliss of a sensual pleasure. Those peaks are, by their nature, unstable and always lead to a valley. Lasting peace is found in the center, in the balanced heart that has learned to walk a path of wisdom and moderation. It is a quiet confidence that we can meet life's challenges without needing to resort to the violent swings of the pendulum. As we learn to walk this balanced path, we bring a new stability to our minds. And from this stable, centered vantage point, we are able to look more deeply at the very object of our past extremes, the self. We were so desperate to either indulge or discipline. We begin to suspect that this self, this entity we thought was so solid and central, might not be what it appears to be at all. This balanced perspective is the perfect launching ground for exploring one of the most radical and liberating insights of this path, the illusion of the separate self. As we learn to walk the balanced path of the middle way, avoiding the sharp cliffs of extremism on either side, our minds become more stable and clear. From this centered place, we are able to investigate the very heart of our experience, the central character in the entire drama of our lives. This is the character we call I. We feel it constantly. I am happy. I am sad. I am thinking. We experience this I as a solid, continuous, and independent entity. It feels like there is a permanent CEO sitting in the headquarters of our mind, a thinker behind the thoughts, a feeler behind the feelings. This belief in a separate, enduring self is the most fundamental assumption we make about ourselves and the world. The Buddhist teaching of anatta, or no self, is a gentle and profound invitation to question this assumption. It asks us not to deny our existence, but to look deeply for this self we believe ourselves to be. Let us embark on this investigation together, with a curious and open mind. Where is this I that you call yourself? Is it your body? Look at your body. It is in a constant state of flux. It is made entirely of non-you elements. The food you ate, the water you drank, the air you are breathing. The cells that compose it are constantly dying and being reborn. The body you have today is not the same body you had 7 years ago, or even 7 minutes ago. The body is a process, not a static thing. So, if the body is always changing, it cannot be a permanent, unchanging self. Perhaps the I is to be found in your mind. We can look at the mind as a collection of different processes, often called the 5 aggregates. The first, as we have seen, is the body, or form. The second is feeling, or sensation. Are you your feelings? Think of the countless feelings that have passed through you today. happiness, boredom, frustration, contentment. They arise, they linger for a while, and then they disappear. They are like weather patterns, temporary visitors in the vast sky of your awareness. If you were your feelings, you would cease to exist when a feeling ended. So, you are not your feelings. The third aggregate is perception. This is the mind's ability to recognize and label things. You see a shape and color, and your perception labels it red car. You hear a sound and label it bird song. You feel a sensation and label it pain. These perceptions are vital for navigating the world. But are they the I? Like feelings, they are fleeting mental events, dependent on a sense organ and an object. They are a function, not a core entity. The fourth is mental formations. This includes all of our thoughts, ideas, opinions, memories, and intentions. This is often where we most strongly believe the I resides. But look at your thoughts. Where do they come from? They appear as if from nowhere, and they disappear just as mysteriously. You cannot hold onto a single thought for long. Your mind is a stream of ceaseless mental activity. If you were your thoughts, which thought would you be? The one you had a second ago? The one you are having now? You are the awareness that witnesses the thoughts, but you are not the thoughts themselves. Finally, the fifth aggregate is consciousness itself, the basic awareness of seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and thinking. But this too is not a solid, independent thing. I consciousness arises only when there is an I and a visible form. Ear consciousness arises only when there is an ear and a sound. It is a dependent process, not a singular, independent entity. So, after this investigation, we are left with a profound discovery. When we look for a solid, permanent, independent self that exists apart from this ever-changing flow of body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness, we cannot find one. The self is not a noun. It is a verb. It is a temporary coming together of these processes, like a whirlwind, is a temporary coming together of wind and dust. The whirlwind is real. You can see it, but there is no solid whirlwindness inside it. When the conditions change, the whirlwind ceases. In the same way, the self is a convenient label for this psycho-physical process, but it is not a fixed reality. This can be a frightening idea at first. If there is no self, does that mean I don't exist? Does it mean nothing matters? This is a critical misunderstanding. The teaching of no self, or anatta, does not mean non-existence. It means no separate existence. It is not an annihilation, but a correction of perspective. It is the realization that we are not isolated islands, but interconnected parts of a vast and intricate web of life. It is the shift from seeing yourself as a separate noun to experiencing yourself as an interconnected verb. The correct term is not non-existence, but inter-existence. You inter-are with everything else in the cosmos. Perhaps the most beautiful metaphor for this is that of the wave and the ocean. Imagine a wave rising on the surface of the sea. It has a birth, a life, and a death. It has a unique form, a specific height and speed. From its limited perspective, the wave might develop a sense of self. It might look at the other waves and feel pride, I am taller than that wave, or envy, I wish I were as powerful as that one. It might fear its own demise, the moment when it will crash upon the shore and cease to be a wave. All of this fear and anxiety comes from the wave's belief that it is a separate, independent entity. But what if, one day, the wave has a moment of insight? What if it looks deeply into its own nature and realizes that it is, and has always been, made of water. In that instant, its fear vanishes. It understands that its true nature is not the temporary form of a wave, but the vast, eternal reality of the ocean. It is not separate from the other waves. They are all manifestations of the same ocean. And when it crashes on the shore, it does not die. It is not annihilated. It simply returns to its true nature, rejoining the boundless life of the ocean, from which it was never, for a single moment, truly separate. We are like those waves. We have our individual forms, our names, our personalities, our life stories. We develop a strong sense of I, and from this sense of separation arises our pride, our jealousy, our fear of death. The teaching of anatta is the invitation to realize that we are the ocean. We are not just this small, temporary, vulnerable waveform. We are a manifestation of the entirety of life. This realization is not just an abstract philosophy. It has profound practical consequences for our daily suffering. So much of our anxiety is rooted in protecting and defending this fragile sense of self. We worry about what people will think of me. We are terrified of public speaking because I might look foolish. We get consumed by anger when someone insults me. But when we see that this me is not a solid, permanent entity, but a fluid and changing process, the target for our anxiety and anger shrinks dramatically. There is less to defend. An insult becomes less personal. It is just one set of mental formations crashing into another. This insight also brings incredible freedom. If you are not a fixed entity, you are not bound by your past. You may have a habit of anxiety, but you are not an anxious person. Because you are not a fixed thing, you have the freedom to change, to cultivate new habits, to be calm in this moment. You are free from the prison of your own self-definition. Ultimately, seeing through the illusion of the separate self does not lead to a cold, empty nihilism. It leads to the exact opposite, a profound and warm-hearted sense of connection with all of life. The feeling of loneliness, of being a small, isolated self struggling against a big, indifferent world, begins to dissolve. You look at a tree and realize that the tree is in you, in the oxygen you breathe, in the wood that makes your home. You look at another person and see that their joys and sorrows are not fundamentally different from your own. You see that their well-being is intimately connected to your well-being. The illusion of separation is the root of all selfishness and conflict. The wisdom of interconnectedness is the root of all love and unity. As we stand on the shore of our own being, having realized that we are not the small, frightened wave, but the vast, fearless ocean, a natural feeling arises. It is a feeling of kinship with all the other waves. When we truly understand that their suffering is our suffering, and their happiness is our happiness, the heart spontaneously opens. This deep seeing of our shared nature is the fertile ground from which true compassion is born. When the solid walls of the separate self begin to dissolve, and we glimpse the profound truth that we are not isolated waves, but expressions of one vast ocean, the heart naturally begins to soften. The illusion of separation is the cold, hard ground in which judgment, fear, and selfishness take root. The wisdom of interconnectedness is the warm, fertile soil from which a new quality can spontaneously arise. This quality is known in the Pali language as karuna. It is most often translated as compassion, but compassion, like suffering, is a word that we must handle with care. In our common language, it is often confused with pity. Pity comes from a place of separation, a feeling of looking down from a safe distance at someone else's misfortune. Pity says, "That poor person, I am glad that is not me." It creates a hierarchy and reinforces the distance between us. Karuna is something entirely different. It is the trembling or quivering of the heart in the face of suffering. It is a deep, resonant empathy that arises from the recognition of our shared humanity. It does not look down from above. It meets the other eye to eye, on the same level ground of our common experience of dukkha. Compassion does not say, "Poor you." Compassion feels with you, and from that feeling arises the powerful, active wish, "May you be free from this suffering." It is not a passive sentiment. It is an active orientation of the heart. On this path, our first and often most challenging task is to turn this compassionate gaze inward, toward ourselves. We may find it easier to feel for a suffering friend or a struggling stranger than to offer the same kindness to ourselves. We live with an inner critic that is relentless, a judge that is never satisfied. We are experts at scolding ourselves for our perceived failures, for not being good enough, for feeling emotions we think we shouldn't feel. We often believe that this harshness is necessary, that it is what motivates us to be better. But in truth, self-criticism is like whipping an already exhausted horse. It only leads to more fear, shame, and paralysis. Self-compassion is the true source of strength and resilience. It is the act of becoming our own ally, our own dearest friend. It is the recognition that we too are doing the best we can with the tools and understanding we have. When you are having a difficult time, when you feel you have failed, the practice of self-compassion is to pause. You can place a hand gently over your own heart, a simple gesture of warmth and comfort. You can acknowledge your pain, saying silently to yourself, "This is a moment of suffering. This is really hard right now." This validates your experience without judgment. And then, you can offer yourself the same words of kindness you would offer a loved one. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion that I need. This is not about letting yourself off the hook. It is about providing the inner nourishment and safety that are required for true growth and healing. You cannot hate yourself into becoming a better person. You can only love yourself into it. The Buddha himself demonstrated the nature of active compassion through his own actions. There is a moving story from the ancient texts that tells of a time he was walking through the monastery with his attendant, Ananda. They came to a hut from which a terrible smell was emanating. Inside, they found a monk lying in his own filth, covered in painful sores. He was suffering from a contagious dysentery, and the other monks, overcome by fear and disgust, had completely abandoned him. He was alone and close to death. Seeing this, the Buddha did not hesitate. He did not lecture or scold. He turned to Ananda and said, "Go and bring some water." When Ananda returned, the Buddha, the fully enlightened one, knelt down beside the sick and abandoned monk. With his own hands, he began to gently wash the man's body, cleaning his wounds and carefully changing his soiled robes. He and Ananda moved the monk to a clean bed and made him comfortable. Afterwards, the Buddha gathered all the other monks together. He asked them, why was this monk left alone? They admitted that they had stayed away because he was sick and they were afraid. The Buddha then spoke to them with a voice that was both gentle and powerful. "Monks," he said, "you have no mother or father here to look after you. If you do not care for one another, who then will care for you? Know this, whoever looks after the sick and the suffering is, in that very act, looking after me." This story reveals the heart of compassion. It is not an abstract feeling. It is a verb. It is the willingness to get your hands dirty, to step into the messiness of suffering and offer what help you can. It is the courage to move past your own fear and aversion for the sake of another. And the Buddha's final statement is the deepest teaching of all. To see the Buddha, the highest potential for goodness and awakening, in the person who is most afflicted. It is to understand, on a visceral level, that there is no separation between the sacred and the profane, the healthy and the sick. To care for another is to care for the deepest part of ourselves. Once we have established a foundation of compassion for ourselves, we can more genuinely extend it outward. The practice is to learn to see every person we meet through the lens of understanding. That irritable co-worker, that aggressive driver, that family member who pushes all our buttons, every one of them is living a life as complex and often as painful as our own. Every one of them is driven by the same basic desire that drives us, the desire to be happy and the desire to avoid suffering. Their harmful words or actions are almost always a misguided strategy to meet these needs. They are the arrows they shoot, from the pain of the first arrows that have struck them. This understanding does not excuse harmful behavior, but it changes our relationship to it. It allows us to protect ourselves and set clear boundaries, but from a place of wise compassion rather than blind anger and hatred. It frees us from the poison of resentment. To help us cultivate this quality, there is a formal and beautiful practice known as metta, or loving-kindness meditation. It is a systematic way of training the heart. The practice involves the silent repetition of certain phrases, directed first toward ourselves, and then progressively outward. You begin with yourself, offering the sincere wishes. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I live with ease. You repeat these phrases gently, allowing the intention behind them to settle in your heart. Then, you bring to mind a person you love dearly, someone for whom it is easy to feel kindness. You hold their image in your mind and extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Next, you expand the circle to include a neutral person, someone you know but have no strong feelings about, like a person who works at a local store. You offer them the same heartfelt wishes. The circle then expands to the most challenging part of the practice, bringing to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict. As best you can, you try to offer them these same wishes for well-being. This is a powerful practice for dissolving anger and healing relationships. It is not about condoning their behavior. It is about freeing your own heart from the prison of hatred. Finally, you extend the phrases outward to encompass all living beings, everywhere, friends and enemies, humans and animals, all beings, near and far. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings live with ease. This is not about trying to force a particular feeling. It is about sincerely offering the intention. It is a workout for the heart, strengthening its capacity for love and connection. Compassion is ultimately not a heavy burden or a moralistic duty. It is a source of profound joy and a wise way to live. It is the natural, radiant warmth of a heart that has understood its own interconnectedness with all of life. In freeing others from suffering, we free ourselves from the isolating cells of anger, judgment, and fear. Compassion is one of the most beautiful flowers that can bloom from the soil of a human life. But for such a flower to blossom, the entire garden must be tended. Our mind is this garden. We must become skillful gardeners, learning to pull the weeds of negativity and to consciously plant and nurture the seeds of wholesome qualities, like this beautiful flower of compassion. When we see with a compassionate heart, we recognize that our inner world is not a fixed and predetermined landscape. It is a living, dynamic space, a garden that has been left untended for most of our lives. Within this garden, weeds of anger, anxiety, and fear have grown wild, often choking the life out of the more delicate flowers of peace, joy, and kindness. The practice of mental cultivation is the gentle, patient, and conscious act of becoming the gardener of our own mind. It is the understanding that we have the power to shape our inner world, not through force, but through wise and consistent effort. The fundamental law of this garden is simple and unwavering. What we plant grows. What we water flourishes. This is the principle of cause and effect applied to our mental life. Every thought that we entertain is a seed. If we repeatedly plant seeds of irritation, dwelling on all the things that annoy us, we cultivate a mind that is quick to anger. We become, in essence, an irritable person. If we repeatedly plant seeds of gratitude, consciously looking for things to appreciate, we cultivate a mind that is open and joyful. We become a grateful person. This is not a mystical belief. It is a practical, psychological truth. The pathways in our brain that we use most frequently become stronger. The mental habits we practice, we become. For much of our lives, we have been unconsciously watering the weeds, and then we wonder why our garden is not a place of beauty and peace. The path of wisdom begins when we decide to become a conscious gardener. The first and most essential tool for any gardener is the ability to see clearly. A gardener who cannot tell the difference between a weed and a flower will create chaos. Our tool for seeing clearly is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the clear, non-judgmental awareness of what is happening in the mind, from moment to moment. It allows us to catch a negative mental state when it is just a small seedling, before it has had a chance to grow into a giant, thorny bush. When a spark of anger arises, the mindful gardener notices it immediately. Ah, anger is here. In that moment of recognition, a space is created. We have a choice. We can either pour the gasoline of our attention onto that spark, feeding it with stories of blame and righteousness until it becomes a raging fire, or we can simply acknowledge it, let it be, and allow it to burn itself out without providing it any more fuel. Without mindfulness, we are gardening in the dark. We react automatically, watering the weeds of our own suffering without even realizing what we are doing. In the Buddhist tradition, the primary weeds that cause us so much trouble are known as the three poisons. The first is greed, or clinging. This is the weed of I want. It is the constant feeling of lack, the insatiable hunger for more pleasure, more possessions, more praise. It is the belief that our happiness lies just outside of ourselves, in the next thing we can acquire. The second poison is aversion, or hatred. This is the weed of I don't want. It is anger, resentment, jealousy, and ill will. It is the violent pushing away of any experience, person, or feeling that we find unpleasant. The third poison, and the root of the other two, is delusion, or ignorance. This is the fundamental confusion about the nature of reality. It is the weed of seeing things as solid and permanent when they are fluid and changing. It is the deep-seated belief in a separate, independent self, when in truth, we are all interconnected. To be a skillful gardener is to learn to recognize these three weeds in all their various forms, and to gently, persistently remove them from the soil of our minds. There is a beautiful folk wisdom story, often attributed to the Cherokee people, that speaks directly to this practice. An old grandfather is teaching his grandson about life. A great fight is going on inside me, he says. It is a terrible fight between two wolves. One wolf is evil. He has anger, envy, greed, arrogance, self-pity, and resentment. The other wolf is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, kindness, and compassion. This same fight is going on inside you, and inside every other person, too. The grandson thinks about this for a moment, and then asks, "Grandfather, which wolf will win?" The old man simply replies, "The one you feed." This simple story holds the entire secret to mental cultivation. The two wolves live within each of us. We cannot kill the dark wolf. To fight it directly often only makes it stronger. The practice is not to destroy the dark wolf, but to starve it by consciously choosing to feed the good wolf. And how do we feed them? We feed them with our attention. Attention is the currency of the mind. Whatever we pay attention to grows stronger. If you spend your day dwelling on a past insult, rehearsing what you should have said, you are feeding the dark wolf. If you spend your time complaining about all the things that are wrong with the world and with your life, you are feeding the dark wolf. If, on the other hand, you consciously direct your attention to the goodness in your life, you are feeding the wolf of light. How do we plant these wholesome seeds and feed the good wolf in our daily lives? We can start with a simple practice of gratitude. Each night before you sleep, take a few moments to reflect on 3 things that you were grateful for during the day. It could be something as small as the taste of your morning coffee, a kind word from a stranger, or the beauty of the setting sun. This practice actively trains your mind to scan for the positive, counteracting the brain's natural tendency to focus on threats and problems. We can practice generosity. This doesn't necessarily mean giving money. It is the generosity of spirit. It is offering a genuine smile, a listening ear, a word of encouragement. Every time we act from a place of generosity, we plant a seed of abundance and connection in our own heart, weakening the weed of greed. We can also practice what is known as sympathetic joy, the art of being happy for other people's happiness. This is the direct antidote to the poison of jealousy and envy. When you hear of someone else's good fortune, instead of feeling a pang of inadequacy, you can consciously choose to be happy for them. This practice dissolves the illusion of competition and reinforces the understanding that another person's light does not diminish your own. It is crucial to remember that the gardener must be patient. You cannot force a flower to grow faster by pulling on its stem. You cannot expect the garden to be transformed overnight. This is a practice of gentle persistence. There will be days when the weeds seem to be winning. There will be times when you feel discouraged. The path of the gardener is to simply show up each day, to tend to the soil, to pull one small weed, to plant one small seed. The cumulative effect of these small, consistent actions is what creates, over time, a profound and lasting transformation. Your mind, once a wild and overgrown thicket, can become a place of beauty, order, and peace. Our happiness, then, is not a matter of chance. It is a matter of cultivation. We are the creators of our own inner world. But every good gardener knows that for a garden to truly thrive, it needs more than just good seeds and the removal of weeds. It needs space. It needs light. It needs periods of quiet stillness to allow the roots to grow deep and the flowers to open. In the same way, for the wholesome qualities in our mind to flourish, we must provide them with the nourishment of spaciousness, the fertile ground of inner silence. This brings us to the exploration of one of the most potent and overlooked practices for a peaceful life, the embrace of silence. In the garden of the mind, we have learned to distinguish the flowers from the weeds, and we have committed to feeding the wolf of light. But for any garden to truly flourish, it needs an essential nutrient, that is becoming increasingly rare in our modern world. That nutrient is silence. We live our lives in a constant cacophony. There is the literal noise of traffic, televisions, and the incessant pinging of our devices. But there is also a more pervasive, internal noise. It is the noise of information, the endless stream of news, opinions, advertisements, and social media updates that we pour into our minds from morning until night. We have become so accustomed to this deluge of sound and data that we have grown afraid of its absence. Silence can feel empty, awkward, even threatening. We have, in many ways, forgotten how to simply be in a quiet space. It is important, first, to understand that there is a difference between external silence and internal stillness. External silence is the absence of sound. It is the quiet of a forest, a library, or a room late at night. This is valuable and deeply nourishing, but it is only half of the equation. Internal stillness is the quieting of the mind's incessant chatter, the calming of the restless inner monologue. It is entirely possible to be sitting in a perfectly silent room while your mind is screaming with anxiety and worry. Conversely, with practice, it is possible to cultivate a core of inner stillness, even while standing in a noisy train station. While we can seek out external silence, the ultimate practice is the cultivation of this inner quiet. When we first make a sincere effort to be silent, the experience can be surprisingly uncomfortable. We turn off the radio, put away the phone, sit down, and are immediately met with a storm of mental activity. It is in the silence that all the things we have been successfully distracting ourselves from come rushing to the surface. The unresolved guilt from a past mistake, the low-grade anxiety about an upcoming project, the lingering sadness from a loss, the echoes of an unkind word. Our constant engagement with noise and distraction is often a form of self-medication, an anesthetic to keep us from feeling what is really there. When we remove the anesthetic, we begin to feel the ache. It is crucial to understand that this is not a sign of failure. It is the beginning of healing. These difficult thoughts and emotions are not arising to punish you. They are arising because you have finally created a safe, quiet space for them to be heard. They are like small children who have been locked in a basement, and now that you have opened the door, they are all rushing out into the light, clamoring for your attention. The practice is not to immediately slam the door and turn the music back on. The practice is to sit there with courage and compassion and allow them to come, to acknowledge them, to feel them in the body, and to let them know they are seen. In the compassionate container of silence, these old wounds can finally begin to heal and release their grip on us. There is a story told of a contemplative monastery where the monks had taken a strict vow of silence to deepen their practice. The only exception was that once every 10 years, each monk was permitted to speak just 2 words to the abbot. A young man joined the order and embraced the silent life. After his first 10 years of silent meditation and work, the time came for his meeting with the abbot. The abbot, an old and serene man, asked him, "It has been 10 years. What are your 2 words?" The young monk thought for a moment and said, "Bed hard." The abbot simply nodded, and the monk returned to his silence for another decade. 10 more years passed. The monk, now middle-aged, came before the abbot again. "You have been here for 20 years, the abbot said. "What are your 2 words now?" The monk replied, "Food bad." The abbot nodded once more, and the monk went back to his life of quiet contemplation. Another 10 years went by. The monk, now an old man with a grey beard, entered the abbot's chamber for his final meeting. 30 years of silence, the abbot said gently. What are your 2 words today? The monk looked the abbot in the eye and said, I quit. The abbot looked back at him with a faint, compassionate smile. Well, he said, I am not surprised. You have done nothing but complain since the day you arrived. This story, though humorous, makes a profound point. The monk was externally silent for 30 years, but his mind was filled with noisy, incessant complaint. He was in a quiet place, but he never cultivated internal stillness. True silence is not merely the absence of speech, it is a quality of mind. This story also teaches us the value of our words. When we are silent, we learn that words are precious. We begin to use them with more care, speaking only what is true, kind, and necessary. The practice of silence purifies not only our mind, but also our speech. When we can sit in silence and allow the initial storm to pass, the silence itself becomes our teacher. When the loud, demanding voices of the ego and anxiety begin to quiet down, we can finally start to hear the subtler sounds of our own being. We begin to hear the quiet whisper of our own heart, revealing what we truly value and long for, beneath the layers of what society has told us we should want. We begin to hear the voice of intuition, that deep, gut-level knowing that cannot compete with the noise of frantic, analytical thought. Silence is the soil in which intuition grows. In silence, we also find clarity. A mind that is constantly churning with thoughts is like a glass of water filled with mud. If you keep shaking the glass, you will never be able to see through it. The way to make the water clear is not to shake it more vigorously, but to set it down and let it be still. In the same way, when we allow our mind to rest in silence, the mud of our confused thoughts and agitated emotions naturally settles to the bottom. The solutions to our problems often appear not when we are actively thinking harder, but when we have stopped thinking altogether and allowed a deeper wisdom to emerge. How can we invite more of this nourishing silence into our busy lives? We can start with small, manageable steps. We can create islands of silence in the ocean of our day. Try driving to work one day with the car radio turned off. Go for a walk in a park and leave your headphones at home. Intentionally listen not just to the sounds of nature, but to the silence between the sounds. You could institute a digital sunset, turning off all screens an hour before you go to sleep, allowing your mind to quiet down naturally. You can even schedule a 5 or 10-minute appointment with yourself to simply sit in a chair and do nothing. No reading, no planning, no meditating in a formal sense. Just being, befriending the silence. Silence is not an emptiness to be feared. It is a spaciousness to be cherished. It is not a void, but a fullness. It is the rich, fertile ground of the garden of the mind, where the seeds of peace, wisdom, and compassion can finally take root and grow strong. As we become more comfortable in this quiet space, our sensitivity to what we allow into our minds naturally increases. The constant noise we once tolerated now feels jarring. The endless stream of information we used to consume mindlessly now seems indigestible. This heightened awareness, born from the practice of silence, leads us to a crucial question. What are we feeding our minds? This leads us directly to the practice of mindful consumption. Having found a measure of peace in the quiet spaces of our lives, we become more sensitive, like a person stepping out of a dark room into the sunlight. We are more aware of the quality of what we allow into our minds and hearts. We begin to understand that we are in a constant state of consumption, and that our diet consists of far more than just the food we eat. The Buddhist tradition speaks of 4 kinds of nutriment, 4 kinds of food, that we take in every day and which determine the state of our well-being. The first, of course, is edible food, the meals that nourish our physical body. The second is sensory impression, everything that we take in through our eyes, ears, and other senses. This is the music we listen to, the images we look at, the very atmosphere of the rooms we inhabit. The third is volition, or our intention. This is the food of our desires and ambitions. The dreams we chase and the goals we set for ourselves are a powerful form of nourishment that directs our life's energy. And the fourth, which is perhaps the most influential in our modern world, is consciousness. This is the food of our minds. The articles we read, the videos we watch, the conversations we have, the ideas we entertain. Just as the food we eat builds our physical body, these other three kinds of food build our mental and emotional body. To be truly healthy, we must learn to be mindful of all four. Let us start with the most tangible, the food on our plate. How often do we eat while distracted, scrolling on our phones, watching television, or working at our desks? In these moments, we are not truly eating, we are simply fueling. We barely taste the food, and we often miss our body's signals that it is full. Mindful eating is a simple yet profound practice. It is the act of bringing your full attention to the experience of eating. It is looking at the vibrant colors on your plate. It is smelling the aromas before you take the first bite. It is chewing slowly, savoring the different textures and flavors. It is an act of respect for the food, for the earth that produced it, and for the body that it will become. It is not about restrictive rules, but about a joyful and present relationship with our nourishment. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offered a beautiful teaching to help us understand the interconnected nature of everything we consume. He invites us to look deeply at a simple sheet of paper. On the surface, it is just a piece of paper. But if we look with the eyes of mindfulness, we can see the sunshine that was essential for the forest to grow. We can see the clouds that became the rain that watered the tree. We can see the logger who cut the tree down, and we can see the wheat that made the bread that gave the logger the strength for his work. We can see the logger's parents and their parents. We can see the entire universe reflected in this single sheet of paper. The paper, he taught, is made of only non-paper elements. This is the insight of interbeing. Nothing exists by itself. Everything is with everything else. We can apply this profound insight to all of our consumption. When we look at a simple carrot, we can see the sun, the soil, the rain, and the farmer's labor. This awareness naturally gives rise to a feeling of gratitude and wonder. When we consume information, like a news story, we can look deeply and see the writer, their perspective, the economic pressures on their publication, and the larger political climate. This helps us to consume media with more wisdom and less blind reactivity. We can begin to ask, what was the intention behind the creation of this article or this video? Is it designed to inform me, or to make me angry or afraid? This leads us to a simple and powerful question we can use as a guide for all our consumption. Does this nourish peace and compassion in me? Before you click on that sensational headline, before you get drawn into a toxic online argument, before you turn on a violent movie, you can pause for a single breath and ask this question. Will this nourish my understanding, my calm, my kindness, or will it water the seeds of my fear, my anger, my craving, my despair? This question is a gatekeeper. It empowers you to become a conscious curator of your own mental and emotional environment. You are no longer a passive receptacle for whatever the world throws at you. You are an active gardener, carefully choosing which seeds to allow into the precious soil of your mind. In our digital age, one of the most powerful practices of mindful consumption is the digital detox. Just as we might fast from food to allow our digestive system to rest and cleanse, we can fast from the constant stream of digital input to allow our minds to do the same. This does not have to be an extreme act. It could be as simple as choosing to keep your phone turned off for the first hour of the morning, giving yourself time to connect with your own intentions for the day before the world's demands rush in. It could be putting all screens away for an hour or two before bed, allowing your nervous system to calm down for more restful sleep, perhaps once a week or once a month. You could take a full day away from the internet. You may be amazed at what happens in this space. At first, there might be restlessness and boredom, but boredom is often the fertile ground from which creativity, insight, and a deeper connection to the physical world can spring. Finally, we can extend this practice of mindful consumption to our relationships, especially to our conversations. We often forget that our words are a form of food for others. When we speak, are we offering nourishing food words that are truthful, kind, and helpful? Or are we offering toxic food gossip, harsh criticism, negativity, and complaint? To be a mindful speaker is to take responsibility for the impact our words have on the inner worlds of others. The other side of this is mindful listening. Listening is also an act of consumption. When we are in a conversation, are we truly taking in what the other person is offering? Are we listening with an open heart, with the genuine intention to understand their experience? Or are we just waiting for our turn to speak, busy formulating our own reply, our own argument, while they are still talking? To listen deeply, without judgment, and with full presence is one of the most nourishing gifts we can offer another human being. It is a profound act of compassion that allows the other person to feel seen and heard. We are, in the end, what we consume. We are built from the food, the sights, the sounds, the ideas, and the conversations that we take in. By becoming mindful consumers, we reclaim our power. We are no longer passively shaped by the chaotic and often toxic forces of the world around us. We become active participants in our own well-being. We learn to protect our minds and hearts, and to actively seek out that which truly nourishes us. This practice of conscious and careful engagement with the world builds a deep inner strength and resilience. When we are well nourished by wholesome consumption, we are no longer so easily thrown off balance. We find we have a greater capacity to stay present and engaged. Even when life presents us with difficulty, we are less inclined to run away from our challenges and more able to turn and face them with clarity and courage. This leads us directly to the profound wisdom of meeting our difficulties head-on, the wisdom of no escape. Having learned to become a more conscious consumer of our life's experiences, we build a foundation of inner strength and nourishment. We are less swayed by the winds of the world because we are choosing our diet more carefully. This newfound stability gives us the capacity to face one of the most fundamental human patterns, the instinct to run away. From our earliest moments, we are wired to avoid pain and seek pleasure. When a difficult emotion like fear arises, when a challenging situation confronts us, when a painful memory surfaces, our immediate, deeply conditioned reflex is to flee. We escape into distraction. We numb ourselves with consumption. We deny what is happening. We build walls of resistance. But the wisdom of this path reveals a profound paradox. What you resist persists. Imagine you are in a swimming pool and you try to push a large beach ball underwater. It takes an immense amount of energy and effort to hold it down. Your muscles are tense, your focus is narrowed, and despite all your effort, you can feel the constant, powerful, upward pressure of the ball. The moment your attention wavers, the ball will burst to the surface with even greater force than before. Our difficult emotions are like this beach ball. When we try to suppress our anxiety, to push down our grief, or to deny our anger, we are engaging in a draining internal battle. The act of resisting the feeling actually gives it more energy. It makes it seem more solid, more powerful, and more threatening. Our avoidance doesn't make the feeling go away. It just ensures that it will return, often at an unexpected moment, with even greater intensity. The wisdom of no escape invites us to try a different approach. What would happen if we simply let go and allowed the ball to gently float on the surface beside us? There is a powerful story from the Tibetan spiritual tradition that illustrates this radical shift in perspective. The great 11th century female teacher, Machig Labdrone, taught a practice called feeding your demons. She taught that when we are confronted by a demon, which is a metaphor for any recurring fear, trauma, addiction, or powerful negative emotional instinct, is to draw a sword and fight it. We try to attack it, to drive it away, to vanquish it. But, she explained, this only makes the demon stronger, fiercer, and more terrifying. She offered a revolutionary alternative. Instead of fighting your demon, you should invite it to tea. The practice she taught involves turning toward the fear. You visualize the difficult energy as a living being, a demon. You then, with a courageous heart, ask it 3 questions. First, what do you want from me? Second, what do you really need from me? And third, how will you feel when you get what you truly need? Having listened deeply to the demon's needs, you then perform the ultimate act of surrender and compassion. You imagine your own body dissolving into a boundless, sweet, golden nectar, the nectar of unconditional acceptance. And you offer this nectar to the demon, feeding it, nourishing it, giving it everything it needs, until it is completely and utterly satisfied. The miraculous result of this practice is that as you feed the demon, as you cease fighting it, and instead meet it with compassion, it begins to transform. It shrinks. Its terrifying features soften. Often, the demon transforms into a helpful ally, a friend. Its trapped energy is released, and it becomes a source of wisdom and power for you on your path. This is the wisdom of no escape. It is the understanding that our demons are not vanquished by fighting them, but transformed by feeding them with love. This may sound like an esoteric practice, but its essence can be applied in a very simple and direct way in our lives. The Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, often taught this same principle, using the image of a crying baby. He would say that our anger, our fear, or our sorrow is like a small crying child within us. When a baby is crying, we do not get angry at it. We do not ignore it or lock it out of the house. That would be cruel and unskillful. A good parent hears the baby's cry, goes to it, and picks it up gently. The parent holds the baby, hugs it, and tries to soothe it with their calm, loving presence. We can learn to do the same with our own difficult emotions. When you feel a surge of anger, instead of immediately suppressing it or acting it out on someone else, you can practice hugging your anger. You can pause and acknowledge it with your mindfulness. Breathing in, I know that anger is here in me. Hello, my little anger. You are not judging it. You are just recognizing it. Then, breathing out, I will take good care of my anger. You embrace the feeling with the tenderness of your mindful awareness. You feel the physical sensations of the anger in your body, the heat, the tension, and you hold it all in a non-judgmental, compassionate space. You are not the anger. You are the loving parent holding the angry child. By doing this, you are neither suppressing the emotion nor indulging it. You are taking care of it. And just like a baby that is held with love, the raw energy of the emotion eventually calms down. Having been seen and accepted, this practice fundamentally changes our relationship with difficulty. We begin to see that our challenges are not obstacles to our spiritual path. They are the spiritual path. A life without any problems or hardships would not produce wisdom or resilience. It is in learning how to navigate the stormy seas that we become skillful sailors. It is in meeting our fear that we discover our courage. Every difficult situation, every painful emotion is an invitation. It is an opportunity to practice, to wake up, to deepen our compassion and our understanding. The curriculum for our enlightenment is not found in a book. It is found in the messy, beautiful, and often challenging details of our actual lives. This leads us to a new understanding of courage. True courage is not the absence of fear. A life without fear would be reckless and foolish. True courage is the willingness to feel the fear fully in your body and your mind, and to not let it be the sole dictator of your actions. It is the capacity to move forward, guided by your values and your wisdom, even while your knees are trembling. The practice of no escape, of turning to face your inner demons, is the ultimate training ground for this kind of authentic courage. When we finally stop running, when we cease our endless search for an escape route from our own experience, something remarkable happens. We discover a profound strength and stability that we never knew we had. We realize that our well-being is not dependent on everything being pleasant and easy. We find a peace that can coexist with pain, a calm that can hold anxiety, a love that can embrace fear. By ending our internal war, we find an inner peace that is truly unconditional. And in this great stopping of all our running, we realize we have arrived. We are already here. The safe harbor we have been desperately searching for is not in some distant future or some other place. The refuge we have been seeking is right here, in the simple, courageous, and unconditional acceptance of this present moment. We discover, at last, that we are already home, having learned the wisdom of no escape, of turning towards our difficulties with compassion. We finally stop running. The frantic, lifelong search for an escape route from the present moment begins to subside. In this newfound stillness, we can observe one of the mind's most deeply ingrained habits: its homelessness. Our mind rarely lives where our body is. It is a perpetual wanderer, a restless ghost. It spends its days haunting the corridors of the past, reliving old glories, reopening old wounds, endlessly editing conversations that are long since over. Or it projects itself into the future, building anxious scenarios about what might go wrong, or spinning hopeful fantasies about a time when everything will finally be perfect. This constant wandering, this inability to settle in the only time that is real right, is the root of our deep-seated feeling of being unsettled, of never quite belonging, of never truly being at home. We spend so much of our energy trying to build a permanent home somewhere else. We believe we will finally feel at home when we get the right job, find the perfect relationship, move to that dream city, or earn a certain amount of money. We live our lives as if we are in a waiting room, waiting for our real life to begin. We treat the present moment as a mere stepping stone to a future destination where we can finally put our heavy bags down, exhale, and feel a sense of arrival. But our own experience shows us the flaw in this logic. We get the job, we find the partner, we go on the vacation, and for a little while, there is relief. But soon enough, the homeless mind gets restless again. It packs its bags and starts dreaming of the next destination, the next achievement, the next if only. We come to realize that the problem is not our location. The problem is the homelessness of our mind itself. No external place can ever be a true home for a mind that does not know how to be present. There is a timeless story that speaks to this universal human quest. A man living in a humble cottage had a powerful dream one night. In the dream, a voice told him that a great treasure lay buried for him under a particular bridge in the distant capital city of the kingdom. The dream felt so real, so charged with meaning, that he became convinced of its truth. He sold his few belongings, said goodbye to his neighbors, and set off on the long and difficult journey. He traveled for many months, facing storms, bandits, and hunger, but the vision of the treasure kept him going. Finally, weary and ragged, he arrived at the capital city and found the very bridge from his dream. His heart leaped, but then sank. The bridge was heavily guarded day and night by the king's soldiers. For days, he paced back and forth, trying to figure out how he could possibly dig for the treasure without being arrested. The captain of the guard, a kind man, noticed this stranger loitering near the bridge day after day. He approached the man and asked him what he was doing. Seeing the captain's kind face, the man decided to tell the truth and confess the story of his dream. The captain roared with laughter. "You foolish man," he said, slapping his knee. "You walked all this way because of a silly dream? You must be mad. Why, if I listened to dreams, I would be on a fool's errand myself. Just last night, I had a dream about a great treasure. The voice told me it was buried in the garden of a man named Isaac, who lives in a small village on the other side of the kingdom, in a cottage with a willow tree by the gate." The traveler stood there, stunned into silence. His name was Isaac, and his humble cottage had a willow tree by the gate. He bowed deeply to the captain, thanked him for his wisdom, and immediately began the long journey back. When he finally arrived home, he went into his own familiar garden and began to dig at the foot of the willow tree. And there, buried beneath the ground he had walked on every day of his life, he found the priceless treasure he had traveled halfway across the world to find. We are all that man. We are all searching for our treasure, our peace, our happiness, our sense of wholeness in some distant land, in some future time. The spiritual journey is this long and often difficult path of discovering that the treasure we seek is not out there. It has been right here, in our own garden, all along. Our true home is not a destination we must strive to reach. It is a reality we must learn to return to. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh gave us a simple and beautiful practice to facilitate this return. It is a short mantra that we can coordinate with our breath and our steps. It is the practice of arriving. As you breathe, you can say silently to yourself, breathing in, "I have arrived." Breathing out, "I am home." This simple phrase is an anchor. "I have arrived" means I am no longer chasing after a future moment. I have stopped running. "I am home" means I am no longer lost in the past. I am present, right here, in my body, in this moment. This is my true refuge. We can practice this with our walking. As you walk, instead of rushing to get to your destination, you can focus on the walk itself. With each step that touches the earth, you can affirm, "I have arrived." Each step becomes a destination. Each step is a miracle of being present on this beautiful planet. You are not walking to get somewhere else. You are walking to be right where you are. This sense of being at home can be discovered in the simplest moments of our day. When you hold a warm cup of tea in your hands, can you be fully present with it? Can you feel its warmth, see its color, smell its fragrance? In that moment of complete presence, you have arrived. You are home. when you are listening to the sound of the rain, or feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin, or truly, deeply listening to a friend, without planning your response in all these moments, you are home. The practice is to recognize these countless opportunities for homecoming that our day offers us. Refuge is not a special place. It is a quality of attention. The liberation that comes from this practice is immense. The exhausting, endless search for happiness can finally come to a rest. The heavy burden of needing to be somewhere else, of needing to become someone else, begins to dissolve. We can finally relax into our own skin, into our own life. This does not mean we become lazy or passive. On the contrary, when our actions are no longer driven by a desperate, homeless striving, they become more powerful, more joyful, and more authentic. We can engage with the world and pursue our goals, but we do so from a foundation of being already settled, already complete. Our true home, then, is not a physical building or a geographical location. It is the quality of our presence in this moment. It is our ability to inhabit our own life, our own body, our own breath, without resistance and with a full heart. To be at home is to be at peace with what is. But being truly at home means accepting our home just as it is, not as we wish it were. An old house has character scratches on the floor, cracks in the plaster, a door that always sticks. In the same way, our own lives, our own hearts, are filled with imperfections, with scars from past hurts, with our own unique flaws and quirks. To truly make our home a place of refuge, we must learn to not only tolerate these imperfections, but to embrace them, to see the beauty in our own beautiful, broken humanity. This brings us to the profound Japanese art of finding beauty in what is broken, the philosophy of kintsugi. Having returned to our true home in the present moment, we begin the gentle work of inhabiting our own lives with unconditional acceptance. But what do we find in this home? We find a place that is not a sterile, perfect museum. We find a life that, like a well-loved house, bears the marks of its history. There are scuffs on the floorboards from dances of joy, and there are cracks in the foundation from the earthquakes of sorrow. Our modern culture, however, teaches us to be ashamed of these cracks. We live in a cult of perfection, relentlessly pressured by social media and advertising to present a flawless facade to the world. We are told to hide our vulnerabilities, to airbrush our flaws, and to pretend that our lives are an unbroken series of successes. This constant striving for an impossible ideal is a profound source of anxiety and a deep feeling of being fundamentally not good enough. The Zen tradition, particularly through the lens of Japanese aesthetics, offers a radically different and profoundly healing perspective. It is a worldview known as wabi-sabi, which finds beauty in things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It is a gentle appreciation for the authentic, the weathered, and the flawed. From this philosophy arises a beautiful and powerful practice, the art of kintsugi. The word means golden joinery. It is the ancient Japanese art of repairing broken pottery. When a cherished tea bowl or vase is dropped and shatters, a kintsugi artist does not try to glue the pieces back together seamlessly to hide the damage. Instead, they do the very opposite. They meticulously reassemble the broken shards using a special lacquer mixed with glittering, powdered gold. The result is breathtaking. The lines of breakage, once a symbol of damage and loss, are now transformed into the most beautiful feature of the object. The bowl is not merely fixed, it is reborn. It is considered more beautiful, more valuable, and more resilient for having been broken. The scars are not hidden, they are illuminated. The history of the object, its unique story of trauma and repair, is now an integral part of its beauty. This practice is one of the most powerful metaphors we have for the human spiritual journey. Each of us, in our own way, gets broken by life. We experience heartbreak. We face failure and loss. We are scarred by disappointment and trauma. These are the moments when the precious vessel of our life shatters. Our instinct, taught by our culture, is to react in one of two ways. Either we throw the broken pieces away in despair, believing ourselves to be ruined and worthless, or we try to glue ourselves back together so perfectly, so invisibly, that no one will ever know we were broken. We put on a brave face, we hide our pain, and we live in constant fear of our carefully concealed cracks being exposed. Kintsugi offers us a third path, a path of courageous and compassionate healing. It invites us to gather our own broken pieces with immense care. It asks us to sit with our wounds, to honor the story of how we were broken. Instead of hiding the scars, we are invited to trace them with the liquid gold of our own mindful awareness, our self-compassion, and the wisdom we have gained through our suffering. Our failures, when met with the gold of humility, become our greatest teachers. Our heartbreaks, when met with the gold of compassion, become the source of our empathy. Our vulnerabilities, when met with the gold of courage, become our greatest strengths. This practice invites us to see our own history with new eyes. That business that failed is not just a source of shame. It is a golden line of resilience and learning. That relationship that ended is not just a painful memory. It is a golden seam of profound lessons about love and loss. The anxiety you live with is not a flaw to be hidden. It is a crack that, when traced with the gold of self-care and understanding, teaches you the true meaning of inner peace. Your scars are not signs of your imperfection. They are proof that you have lived, that you have taken risks, that you have loved, and that you have survived. They are the marks of a life fully engaged. The poet Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you. Our cracks are what make us porous to grace. They break open our hard shell of ego and allow a deeper wisdom and a more profound love to illuminate our being." The philosophy of Kintsugi is also a quiet rebellion against the disposable mentality of our time. We live in a world where if something breaks, we throw it away and get a new one. This applies to our phones, our clothes, and all too often, to our relationships, and even to the parts of ourselves we dislike. Kintsugi is a philosophy of repair. It is a commitment to honoring what is, to seeing value in what has endured, and to engaging in the patient, loving work of mending. To apply this to ourselves is to reject the impulse to discard the parts of us we find unworthy. It is to embrace our whole being, the light and the dark, the smooth surfaces and the jagged edges, and to see it all as worthy of care. We can practice a form of self-kintsugi in our own meditation. You can bring to mind a part of yourself that you feel is broken or a memory that feels like a scar. Instead of your usual habit of pushing it away or judging yourself for it, can you just hold it in your awareness with kindness? Acknowledge the pain of that experience. Honor its story. Then, in your mind's eye, imagine you have a very fine brush dipped in liquid gold. Gently, lovingly, trace the lines of that crack, that wound, that scar. Watch as the dark line of judgment is transformed into a shimmering line of golden light. See how this light does not erase the break, but celebrates it, integrates it, makes it a part of your unique and precious beauty. See your entire being as a magnificent kintsugi bowl, a one-of-a-kind masterpiece, made all the more profound by the very history you once tried to hide. This embrace of imperfection extends outward to our view of life itself. We can begin to let go of our rigid demand that life be neat, orderly, and perfect. We can find beauty in an overcast day, in an asymmetrical flower, in a life that takes unexpected and crooked turns. It is a deep, relaxing breath into reality as it is, not as our fantasies would have it. To embrace the way of kintsugi is to finally be able to love ourselves, not in spite of our flaws, but because of them. Our broken places, healed and illuminated by the gold of our own loving awareness, become the source of our deepest character and our most authentic beauty. When we can finally accept our own glorious imperfection, the enormous, soul-crushing weight of trying to be perfect is lifted. We no longer have to pretend, to perform, to wear a mask. We can be authentic. We can be real. We can finally relax. This profound state of self-acceptance and ease allows us to move through the world differently. We are no longer striving and forcing our way through life. We can begin to act in harmony with the natural flow of things, with a grace and effortlessness we never thought possible. This brings us to the discovery of a new way of being, a way of action known as Wu Wei. When we finally learn to embrace ourselves as we are, imperfections and all, a great, heavy burden is lifted from our shoulders. The exhausting performance of trying to be perfect can finally come to an end. We no longer have to force, to strain, to pretend. This profound self-acceptance opens the door to a new and graceful way of moving through the world. A way of acting that is not born from the frantic striving of the ego, but from a place of deep, quiet harmony. This is the art of effortless action. In the Taoist tradition, which deeply influenced Zen, this is known as Wu Wei. These two words are often translated as non-action, but this can be misleading. Wu Wei does not mean being passive, lazy, or apathetic. It is not about sitting back and letting life happen to you. It is perhaps more accurately translated as effortless action or spontaneous action. It is the art of acting in alignment with the natural flow of things, without force, without internal resistance. It is the action that arises when we get out of our own way. It is the grace of a skilled dancer who has practiced so much that they no longer need to think about the steps. Their body simply moves in perfect harmony with the music. Our usual way of acting is born from struggle. The ego identifies a goal, and then we use willpower and brute force to try and achieve it. We try to bend reality to our will. This kind of action is often stressful, depleting, and inefficient. It feels like trying to row a boat against a strong current. Wu Wei, on the other hand, is like putting up a sail. We still have a direction, but we use the natural energy of the wind and the water to carry us forward. It is an intelligent, responsive, and profoundly effective way of engaging with life. The classic story that illustrates Wu Wei most beautifully is that of the master butcher, Ding, from the ancient texts of Zhuangzi. A local lord came to watch Ding as he was cutting up an ox carcass. The lord was mesmerized. Ding's knife seemed to dance. Every touch, every slice, every movement was perfectly fluid and graceful. The ox seemed to fall apart on its own, with no struggle. The sound of the knife, a gentle, rhythmic whisper. The Lord, astonished, praised the butcher for his incredible skill. "How did you achieve such mastery?" he asked. The butcher put down his knife and replied, "What I care about is the way, which goes beyond mere skill. When I first began cutting up oxen, all I could see was the ox itself. After 3 years, I no longer saw the whole ox. I saw the natural lines of division. Now, he continued. I go at it with my spirit and don't look with my eyes. My senses stop functioning and my spirit moves where it wants. I follow the natural contours, guiding my blade through the great hollows, and I never touch a ligament or a tendon, let alone a major bone, he explained. A good cook changes his knife once a year because he cuts. A mediocre cook changes his knife once a month because he hacks. I have used this knife for 19 years, and I have cut up thousands of oxen, yet the blade is as sharp as if it had just come from the grindstone. There are spaces between the joints. The blade of the knife has no thickness. If you insert what has no thickness into such a space, then there's plenty of room. That's why after 19 years, the blade of my knife is still as sharp as ever. He concluded by saying that whenever he comes to a complicated part, he slows down, focuses his attention, and moves the knife with the utmost subtlety until the piece falls away, like a clump of earth crumbling to the ground. This story is a deep teaching on the nature of effortless action. The butcher is in a state of pure presence, a state of no mind. He is not thinking, now I must cut here. His actions arise spontaneously from a deep, intuitive understanding of the ox's structure. He is not imposing his will on the ox. He is aligning his actions with its natural reality. He finds the path of least resistance, the empty spaces. This is why his action is so effective and why his knife, a metaphor for his own energy, is never depleted. When we act with force and resistance, we burn ourselves out. When we act in harmony with the way, our actions are sustainable and can even feel nourishing. You may have experienced glimpses of Wu Wei in your own life. Modern psychology calls it a flow state. It might happen when you are engaged in a creative pursuit, like painting or playing music. It might happen while playing a sport, or even while deeply engrossed in a meaningful conversation. In these moments, your sense of a separate self dissolves. Your action and your awareness become one. Time seems to disappear. There is no feeling of effort or strain, only a joyful, fluid unfolding. This is the experience of Wu Wei. It is not some mystical, unattainable state. It is a natural human potential. How then do we cultivate this quality? The paradox is that you cannot try to be effortless. The very act of trying is effortful and comes from the ego, which is the main obstacle to Wu Wei. Instead, Wu Wei arises on its own when the conditions are right. And what are those conditions? They are the very qualities we have been exploring on this journey. First, there is mindfulness and presence. To act effortlessly, you must be completely present with the task at hand, just as the butcher was completely present with the ox. Your mind cannot be wandering in the past or future. Second, there is letting go of the outcome. The butcher enjoyed the process, the dance of his knife. If he had been anxiously focused on getting the job done quickly, his movements would have been tense and clumsy. Wu Wei arises when we fall in love with the process, rather than being obsessed with the result. Third, there is trust. This means trusting in the natural process of things and trusting in your own intuitive wisdom that lies deeper than conscious thought. It is the willingness to let go of the ego's desperate need to control every detail. And finally, there is practice. The butcher had cut up thousands of oxen. His skill was so deeply ingrained that it became second nature. Often, effortless action arises from a foundation of disciplined practice. We practice the scales so that we can forget them and simply play the music. A vital part of this wisdom is knowing when to act and when to wait. Wu Wei is not about constantly doing. It is also the wisdom of inaction when the time is not right. Think of a surfer sitting on her board, calmly watching the waves. She does not waste her energy by trying to paddle for every little ripple. She waits with patient awareness. She senses the rhythm of the ocean. And when the right wave begins to form, a wave with real power, she turns and commits her energy fully, paddling with focus and precision. Then, she stands and enjoys a beautiful ride to the shore. To act with the wisdom of Wu Wei is to be like that surfer, sensitive to the rhythms of life, knowing when to conserve energy and when to act with decisive, focused power. Ultimately, Wu Wei is the sublime art of getting out of your own way. It is the grace that emerges when the anxious, striving ego steps aside and allows a deeper, more universal intelligence to flow through us. It is the experience of dancing with life, rather than wrestling with it. This way of being, this harmonious dance, arises from a profound, intuitive feeling. It is the feeling that you and the world you are acting in are not two separate things. The butcher and the ox, the surfer and the wave, are part of one and the same process. This deep, embodied understanding of our fundamental oneness with the world around us is the very heart of the next great insight on our path, the wisdom of interbeing. When we learn to move with the effortless grace of Wu Wei, we are acting from a place of deep harmony with the world around us. This harmony is born from an intuitive, embodied understanding that we are not separate from the life we are engaging with. The butcher is not separate from the ox. The surfer is not separate from the wave. This deep feeling of connection takes us beyond the intellectual idea of no self and into the warm, beating heart of one of the most beautiful teachings of Zen, the wisdom of interbeing. The term interbeing was coined by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. He created this word because our standard English verb, to be, can be deceptive. When we say something is, it implies a solid, separate, independent existence. But nothing exists in that way. Everything exists only in relationship to everything else. Nothing can be by itself alone. It can only interbe. To be is always to interbe. This is not a philosophy. It is a direct observation of reality. Let us return to the simple sheet of paper we explored earlier, but this time, let us look even more deeply. Hold this imaginary sheet in your mind. We see a white, rectangular object, but let us look with the eyes of interbeing. Can we see the cloud in the paper? If you look deeply, you will see it. Without a cloud, there can be no rain. Without rain, the tree cannot grow. Without the tree, we cannot make paper. So the cloud is an essential part of the paper. If you were to send the cloud back to the sky, the paper could not exist. Can you see the sunshine in the paper? Without the sun's light and warmth, the tree cannot perform photosynthesis. The sun is a mother to the tree, so the sunshine is also in the paper. If you send the sunshine back to the sun, the paper will vanish. And what about the logger who cut the tree and the truck driver who brought it to the mill? Can you see their bread and water in the paper? Can you see the wheat field and the farmer who grew the wheat for the logger's bread? Can you see the logger's parents and their parents before them? They are all present, right here, in this sheet of paper. The list goes on and on. The earth, the minerals in the soil, the person who designed the paper mill, the person who sold you the paper. If we remove any one of these elements, the paper cannot be. This is the profound truth of interbeing. The paper is empty of one thing only, a separate, independent self. It has no separate existence, but it is full of everything else. The sun, the clouds, the forest, the people, the entire cosmos. To be empty, in this sense, is to be full of everything. Now, let us turn this gaze upon ourselves. Look at your own hand. This hand is not just your hand. It is the hand of your parents and their parents and all your ancestors. Their DNA, their experiences, their struggles and joys are present in you. The food you ate for breakfast this morning is in this hand, and that food contains the sun, the rain, and the earth. The air you are breathing in this very moment is becoming a part of you. The words and ideas you have learned from your teachers and your culture are flowing through your mind. Like the sheet of paper, you are empty of a separate, isolated self, but you are full of the entire universe. The moment we begin to feel this truth in our hearts, not just as an idea, but as a lived reality, the great suffering of loneliness begins to dissolve. Loneliness is an epidemic in our modern world. It is a pain that comes from the belief that we are a small, fragile self, struggling alone against a vast and indifferent world. But from the perspective of interbeing, loneliness is an impossibility. How can you be alone when the sunshine is your father and the earth is your mother? How can you be separate when the air you breathe connects you intimately with every other living being on the planet? You are a note in a grand symphony, and your existence is what makes the music possible. You belong, completely and fundamentally, to the fabric of life. This realization also brings with it a profound sense of responsibility. If we are all interconnected, then every action we take, every word we speak, every thought we think, has ripples that extend far beyond our own personal sphere. There is no longer a clear line between what is my business and what is your business. When we pour pollution into a river, we are polluting our own bodies because we are with the river. When we speak a word of anger to another person, we are planting a seed of anger in the collective consciousness, a seed that will eventually find its way back to us. When we cultivate peace in our own heart, we are contributing to the peace of the world. This understanding is the most powerful source of social and ecological action. We no longer protect the environment out of a sense of abstract moral duty. We protect the forests and the oceans because we recognize that they are not separate from us. They are our external lungs, our external circulatory system. To care for them is self-care. We no longer work for social justice out of pity for others. We work for it because we understand that as long as one person is oppressed, our own freedom is incomplete. Their well-being is our well-being. The imaginary boundary between self and other dissolves, and in its place arises a vast and compassionate sense of kinship. We can practice seeing with the eyes of interbeing in every moment. As you drink a glass of water, take a second to recognize the journey it has taken, from the clouds to the river to your cup. Silently thank the water. As you eat a piece of fruit, see the tree, the sun, and the earth within it. As you interact with another person, try to see beyond their immediate personality. See their ancestors behind them, their joys and sorrows, their own deep longing for happiness. See that they, like you, are a miraculous manifestation of the entire cosmos. This is the joyful truth that lies at the heart of reality. We are not lonely fragments. We are interwoven threads in a single, magnificent tapestry. We are not competing waves, but the same ocean, expressing itself in countless, beautiful forms. To live with this awareness is to feel a deep sense of belonging and reverence for all of life. Our actions naturally become more harmonious. Our hearts naturally become more compassionate. And from this ground of profound connection, a certain kind of happiness begins to bloom. It is not the loud, boisterous happiness of the ego getting what it wants. It is a much quieter, more stable, and more profound state of being. It is a gentle contentment, a peaceful joy that comes from seeing things as they truly are. It is the quiet recognition of the miracle of it all, a recognition that can be seen in the gentle, knowing smile of the Buddha. Having journeyed into the profound truth of interbeing, feeling our deep and unbreakable connection with all of life, a new quality of experience can begin to dawn within us. It is a subtle and gentle joy, a quiet contentment that is not dependent on external circumstances. It is not the loud, ecstatic happiness that comes from getting what we want. That kind of happiness is exciting, but it is also fragile and impermanent, like a firework that lights up the sky for a brilliant moment and then vanishes into smoke. The joy we are now speaking of is more like the steady, gentle, and enduring light of the moon. It is a peace that shines even in the darkness. The most perfect expression of this state is found in the art of the ancient world, in the serene, gentle smile of the Buddha. If you call to mind the image of a statue of the Buddha or a bodhisattva from a temple or a book, you will notice the expression on the face. It is not an expression of giddy laughter or overt bliss. It is a subtle, knowing, half smile. The eyes are often gently closed or gazing softly downward, and the lips are turned up in the slightest, most peaceful of smiles. In a world that we know is filled with so much suffering, with sickness, old age, death, and the countless sorrows of the human heart, what is the source of this unshakable serenity? What does this smile know? This smile is not a denial of suffering. It is the expression of a mind that has transcended suffering through wisdom. It is, first, the smile of radical acceptance. It is the smile of someone who has finally stopped fighting with reality. It no longer demands that life be other than it is. It is a smile that can hold both the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows with equanimity. It is the smile of the kintsugi master who sees the beauty in the broken places. It is the smile of the musician whose lute string is tuned just right. It does not mean that the world has become perfect, but that the heart has found a perfect peace with the world's imperfection. It is also the smile of deep understanding. It is the smile of someone who sees the nature of reality directly. It sees the truth of impermanence, knowing that all things arise and pass away, and therefore it does not cling. It sees the truth of no self, knowing that there is no small, fragile ego to defend, and therefore it is free from fear. It sees the truth of interbeing, knowing its deep connection to all that is, and therefore it is free from loneliness. This clear seeing is profoundly liberating, and the gentle smile on the lips is the natural, outward sign of this inner freedom. It is a smile that says, I see how it all works, and I am no longer caught in the game. And most importantly, this is a smile of boundless compassion. It is not a cold, detached smile of someone who is above it all. It is filled with an infinite warmth and tenderness for all beings who are still caught in the dream of separation, still struggling in the grip of fear and desire. It is the gentle smile of a loving grandparent, watching their grandchildren play, understanding their small squabbles and their fleeting joys, and loving them through it all. It is a smile that radiates peace and acceptance to the entire world. Where do we find this joy? The secret of the Buddha's smile is that it is not found by achieving some extraordinary, transcendent state that is separate from our life. It is found by bringing an extraordinary quality of attention to our ordinary life. The joy is hidden in the simplest of things, waiting for us to notice. When you pour a cup of tea, can you be fully present? Can you feel the weight of the pot, hear the sound of the liquid filling the cup, see the steam rising, and smell the subtle fragrance? In that moment of pure, undivided attention, there is a quiet joy. The joy is not in the tea itself, it is in the quality of your presence. When you step outside and feel a cool breeze on your cheek, can you stop for just a moment and truly feel it? That simple, pleasant sensation is a gateway to deep contentment if we are present enough to receive it. The source of this joy is a quiet mind. When the mind is not restlessly seeking something more, when it is not lost in worry or regret, it can settle down and appreciate the miracle of what is right here. The taste of fresh water, the sound of a bird singing, the warmth of a blanket, the comfort of a familiar room. These are not small pleasures, they are profound gifts. The Buddha's smile is the smile of someone who has learned to find immense richness in the simplest of experiences. We can actively cultivate this state through a simple and beautiful practice taught by Thich Nhat Hanh, the practice of a half smile. It is not a wide, fake grin. It is a very slight, subtle lifting of the corners of the mouth. You can try it right now. Just allow your facial muscles to relax and let a tiny smile form. Physiologically, this simple act has a powerful effect. There are hundreds of muscles in your face, and when they are tense, they send a signal of stress to your brain. When you consciously relax them into a half smile, you send a signal of calm and ease back to your nervous system. A tense face contributes to a tense mind. A relaxed face encourages a relaxed mind. You can practice this half smile at any time. When you first wake up in the morning, before you even get out of bed, you can lie there for a moment and allow a half smile to form, setting a tone of gentleness and peace for your day. You can practice it during your meditation, as it helps to prevent the practice from becoming too grim or serious. You can practice it when you are listening to a piece of music, walking in nature, or reading a book. Most powerfully, you can practice the half smile when you feel a difficult emotion arising, when you feel a wave of irritation, anger, or anxiety. Instead of tensing up and fighting it, see if you can meet it with a half smile. The smile does not deny the feeling. It creates a space of wisdom around it. It is a message to yourself that says, I see this anger, but I don't have to be swept away by it. I can hold it with spaciousness and peace. It prevents the difficult emotion from taking over your whole being. It is a gesture of inner strength and profound self-compassion. This smile, then, is not a naive or Pollyanna-ish happiness that ignores the reality of suffering. It is a smile that is big enough to hold all of life. It is the smile of the kintsugi bowl, made more beautiful by its golden scars. It is the smile of someone who has faced their demons and fed them with compassion. It is a peace that can coexist with pain, a joy that can hold sorrow. It does not deny the darkness in the world. It is the gentle light that illuminates it with wisdom and love. The smile of the Buddha is the quiet blossoming of a heart that is at peace with the totality of existence. It is the gentle joy that is our true nature, always available when we stop our frantic searching and learn to be present with the life that is right here. This smile is not a final destination, not a certificate of graduation from the school of life. Rather, it is the very expression of the path itself. It is the natural radiance of a person who is learning, moment by moment, breath by breath, what it truly means to be awake in the midst of this ordinary, extraordinary life. As our journey together through the quiet hours draws to a close, we arrive not at a final, esoteric secret, but at a truth so simple and profound that it is often overlooked. We have explored the inner landscapes of the mind, the breath, and the heart. But what is the purpose of all this inner work if it does not change how we live when the sun rises? The ultimate goal of this path has never been to escape the world. It has never been about levitating on a mountaintop or retreating to a monastery for the rest of our days. The true awakening, the only enlightenment that matters, is the ability to engage with this messy, beautiful, ordinary world fully, with an open heart and a clear mind. It is the capacity to be present, compassionate, and peaceful, right in the midst of your everyday life. There is a famous saying in the Zen tradition that perfectly encapsulates this entire journey. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Before the journey begins, the tasks of life: chopping wood, carrying water, washing dishes, paying bills, dealing with traffic often feel like burdens. When you chop the wood, your mind is not on the wood. It is complaining about the ache in your back, worrying about a conversation you had yesterday, or anxiously planning what you need to do next. The act of chopping is a chore, an obstacle to be overcome, so you can get to something better. When you carry the heavy buckets of water, you resent their weight. Your mind is elsewhere, dreaming of a time when you can finally sit down and rest. The body is performing the task, but the spirit is suffering, lost in a labyrinth of resistance and dissatisfaction. This is life lived in a dream, a state of perpetual distraction. Then, the journey of awakening begins. You practice, you sit, you breathe, you watch, you let go. You have profound insights into the nature of reality, of self, of suffering. And then what? You return to your life, and you find the wood still needs to be chopped, and the water still needs to be carried. Nothing on the outside has changed, but on the inside, everything is different. Now, when you pick up the axe, you feel its weight in your hands. You see the intricate grain of the wood. You are aware of the motion of your body, the crisp sound as the blade splits the log, the fresh scent of pine that fills the air. Your mind isn't complaining or worrying. It is simply there, with the chopping. The chopping is no longer a means to an end. It is the whole universe in that one single action. It has become a meditation. When you carry the water, you feel the pull in your muscles not as a burden, but as the sensation of strength. You feel the rhythm of your feet on the earth. You notice the way the light reflects off the water's surface. The journey from the well to the house is no longer a tiresome chore, but a walking meditation. Each step, a moment of full embodied presence. The tasks are the same, but you are no longer suffering. You are awake. This is the invitation for you, right now, to see that your entire life is a potential ground for practice. You do not need a special cushion or a silent room. The kitchen sink can be your monastery. As you wash the dishes, feel the warmth of the water on your hands. Watch the iridescent soap bubbles form and pop. Hear the gentle sound of the plates touching. When you do this, you are not just washing dishes. You are cultivating presence. You are awake. When you are stuck in traffic, instead of tightening with frustration, you can use the red light as a bell of mindfulness. Take a conscious breath. Feel your hands on the steering wheel. Look around without judgment. The traffic jam is no longer a personal affront. It is an opportunity to practice patience, to return to your center. Every mundane task, folding laundry, sweeping the floor, making a cup of tea, can be transformed from a mindless chore into a sacred ritual, simply by bringing your full, kind attention to it. This is also where true peace is tested and where it is truly forged. It is easy to feel peaceful when you are alone and everything is quiet. But can you maintain that peace when your partner says something that irritates you? Can you hold on to your center when a project at work goes wrong, or when you receive difficult news? These moments are not signs that your practice has failed. They are the final exams. They are the moments that show us, with perfect clarity, where our ego is still hooked, where we are still caught in conditioned, automatic reactions. These challenges are not obstacles to your peace. They are the very path to it. Each difficult interaction is a precious opportunity to choose a mindful response, over a habitual reaction, to choose compassion over anger, to choose understanding over blame. This is how wisdom grows. Not on a cushion, but in the heart of human relationships and real-world challenges. The spiritual journey is a perfect circle. We start in our ordinary life, full of distraction and dissatisfaction. We journey inward, exploring the depths of our own consciousness. And the path leads us right back where we started, to our own kitchen, our own family, our own work. But we see it all with new eyes. The world has not changed, but we have. And in our transformation, the entire world is transformed. The sacred is found, not in escaping the mundane, but by fully inhabiting it. We began this journey together in the restless mind of the insomniac, a mind caught in the turbulent currents of yesterday and tomorrow. From that place of struggle, we learned step by step how to come home. We learned to simply stop and to find an anchor in the gentle, reliable rhythm of the breath. We learned to let go of our desperate expectations for how things should be and to open ourselves to how things are. We looked into the face of impermanence and suffering, not with fear, but with a growing understanding and compassion. We began to discover the quiet beauty hidden within the cracks of imperfection. We traveled from the lonely, isolated island of the I and began to feel the vast, interconnected ocean of being that holds us all. The most vital truth to carry with you from this journey is this: peace is not the absence of noise, of storms, or of life's inevitable challenges. Peace is an inner state. It is the unshakable ability to be with all of those things without being swept away by them. It is not something you must search for in a distant land or in a future moment. It is something you return to. It has always been here, waiting patiently for you, in the profound stillness of the present moment. Let this understanding leave you with a quiet sense of hope, clarity, and self-possession. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to go anywhere else to find what you are looking for. All the tools you will ever need are already yours, as intimate as your own body and mind. Your breath is your anchor. Your mindful attention is your light. Your compassionate heart is your sanctuary. The final invitation is simply this: be gentle with yourself. Slow down and listen, truly listen, to the simple, profound, and beautiful melody of your own life, unfolding in this and every present moment.